everybody, and welcome to the deepest dive on Halo Infinite. It is the best, most thorough discussion about Halo Infinite's campaign on the internet. My name is Ben Hansen, and MinnMax is a Patreon about games, friends, getting better. I'm joined by, okay, let's start with this guy, Jeff Marchiafava.
Hello.
Welcome to the big show. We have Kyle Hilliard.
I'm here. That's my Master Chief impression.
That is stunning. We're also joined by former cohort himself, Suriel Vasquez returns from the depths of space.
What?
Podcast.
Hell yeah.
We woke when we needed him.
We needed him right now.
I just now woke up, yeah.
We're also joined by the Halo lore master himself, former Game Informer editor and filmmaker extraordinaire, Wade Wojcik.
Let's finish the fight.
That's Master Chief right there. That's how I remember the end of Halo 2.
That's right.
Unbelievable. Wade, thank you for being here, sir.
Thank you for having me. It's a blast.
Yeah, last year we did the deepest dive on Halo Combat Evolved. You can find that on MinnMax's YouTube channel if you want even more Halo goodness. And for some stupid reason, we didn't have you on until the multiplayer section, even though, look, you're a professional multiplayer player, I'll just say, when it comes to Halo. But you're the lore lad above anything. So I just imagined you listening to our old deepest dive and just cringing constantly because all of us are like, why are there trees on the Halo again? Just like the basic crap like that. And so I'm glad we have it at the beginning.
I don't think that's an unreasonable stance because one of the problems that Halo games have had is that they don't tell you everything you need to know in the games to understand what's going on.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you got to read the books. You got to read these 7 books, and then you'll understand why there's trees on Halo. So I think that's warranted.
Okay, good.
There's definitely a big case of that in this game, for sure.
Oh, boy. Yeah, we'll talk about all that stuff. Let's try and set some templates for people that are watching, maybe for the first time. Hi, I'm Ben Hansen. I really liked Halo 1's multiplayer back in the day. I just played Halo 1's campaign for the first time last year for the deepest dive. I've started...
I don't know why that's so funny to me.
Wow.
I've started every other Halo game, but have not gotten that far. So I am on the far idiot end of the spectrum, which means I'm bulletproof and immune to nasty comments. So that's where I'm at. Now, Wade Wojcik, however, insists he'll never get anything wrong about Halo, and he's read every book, and he knows everything about the gameplay. Is that correct?
No.
And he's speaking into a guilty spark. Look at that thing.
No, when you guys were doing the deepest dive of Halo 1, I had commented on the Patreon about how Johnson was immune to the Flood, and then one of the patrons corrected me and said, actually, no, he's not. And so I was wrong about that. That was a really weird discrepancy in Bungie's canon and whether or not that was true.
Interesting.
So there are things I say that are wrong, and I encourage people to correct me.
Okay, but still the resident super fan, but you'll still be fallible. That's the fair assessment for the group? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. And then Kyle, Jeff, and Suriel, I think you're all roughly in the same camp of you've played the games, you've enjoyed the games, but you're not exactly an encyclopedia for the lore, right?
Correct.
You're all identical.
I enjoy the story. I didn't play 5. Like, that's kind of
interesting.
I'm at, you know?
Okay. All right. And this is the deepest dive. We are going to be covering everything in Halo Infinite's campaign up until the Pelican crashes, the start of the mission called Pelican Down. So it's right where the gameplay demo from 2020 starts. So right when the Pelican crashes, that's where we've all stopped. And that's where all of the community members from MinnMax have stopped. Because what this is it's a giant community game club. We had a bunch of people who went over to Patreon at patreon.com/MinnMax with 2 N's. Supporters at just a $2 tier were able to submit a comment. And so we have a bunch of comments from people about a bunch of different topics about everything in this first roughly half of Halo Infinite. So we're going to get to some of those, get to our own thoughts. And you can submit a comment for us to read on the next discussion, which is covering the next half of the game. And that discussion, you have plenty of time for it. That's going to be in early January. So January 2nd is where we're going to be looking for your comments. But if you go over to Patreon, support us at any tier, you can submit a comment and we'll read it on the next episode. So if we get anything wrong, that's your chance to correct us in a big way. If you're saying, why aren't they talking about the reload animations, anything specific, that's what we're looking for. Head over to Patreon. And also, you can head over to Patreon to unlock the podcast version of this discussion. If you support us at the $5 tier, you can unlock the podcast version of this, early access to the MinnMax Show podcast. You also get a bunch of nonsense MinnMax Council or Patreon exclusive podcast, our film commentaries, like we have commentaries for The Matrix, for the entire Lord of the Rings extended edition trilogy, if you're in the mood around the holidays, all that fun stuff. So there's a lot of reasons to support MinnMax and support the game club format moving forward if you enjoy the deepest dive. Suriel, Aren't you glad you don't have to deal with those plugs anymore, man?
I love plugs, personally. It's
Really?
when people get to tell you what else they're up to.
Yeah, man, that's a really good way of looking at it. Wade, can I plug your Halo masterwork out of the gate, which is your fan film called Dawn Under Heaven? If anyone's doubting your knowledge of Halo or your passion for Halo, just look up Dawn Under Heaven fan film from Halo, and it's you and a small team. How big was that team that made that fan film?
There were about 5 of us in the core team, and then a bunch of others that kind of came and went over the years. Sorry, my cat's on the desk here.
It's a cat helmet after all, so.
Yeah, I would say, if I can go into it for just a brief second, the Halo fan film community really blossomed around 10 years ago, and it was basically like, oh, you can make movies now with DSLR cameras. Oh, it's easy to make armor. Therefore, it's easy to make Halo movies. And so, turns out it's not so easy. But yes, that's how it came about, and it was... It was a long labor of love for Halo.
It was like a 10-year labor, but you eventually got it out of your system, so congratulations. Hey, everybody, we had a lot of people submitting comments over on Patreon, a lot of thoughts, but something we like to do to kick off the deepest dive is something that we call Most Common Comment, where we had hundreds of people leaving comments. The question is, what was the most common comment, the most recurring comment? Kyle, you seem to enjoy this format the best, this question the best, so what do you think? What's number one?
I usually like to offer like weird guesses. I feel like this one's pretty straightforward, but I think it's just that the grapple shot is awesome and changes things in a big way.
Okay. Jeff, and you're nodding. You think that's what it is as well?
That's what my answer was too before Kyle stole it.
Okay, Wade, what do you think?
I was no joke going to say the same thing.
All right, Serial Vasquez, shake it up, baby. What do you got?
Here's my anecdote about this crazy thing the grappling hook did.
The correct answer is here's my anecdote.
Just to make it a little more interesting, my follow-up was the Mangler is like way like surprisingly awesome, and like the weapon I always gravitate towards, which is like I am never a pistol guy, but I love that thing.
That would have been my comment, but no, it is not. Grapple was number 2, just how awesome the grappling is. Number 1 most common comment over there on Patreon, it was talking about the dialogue from the grunts. Everybody quoting their favorite grunt line. Everybody had a different line because there is a lot of dialogue from these grunts thrown in there. But I guess, should we just start with that?
Shout out to Aaron Lindy, right? Who I follow on Twitter and he was like a big force behind a lot of that writing, from what I understand.
Sure.
So he's like constantly sharing all that stuff, you know?
Yeah, it's funny to give him a shout out so early, but yeah, even Nick from Atlanta referenced him saying, I love the variety and dialogue for this game. Glibnub, the propaganda grunt in particular, is hilariously dark. Aaron Lindy, who's the lead narrative designer, said the character is based on Axis Sally, an American broadcaster hired by the Germans in World War II to spread Nazi propaganda. Just a nice uplifting way to kick off the deepest dive. But yeah, Aaron Lindy...
well, it's funny, just to stick on grunt dialogue for a second. I feel like people are talking about it a lot, and I love seeing all the clips people share of lines that they hear. But it's funny to me that I haven't seen anyone draw a line between it and Borderlands, considering Lindy's background with Borderlands, where it's like that's very similar to when the enemies would attack you in Borderlands, and you get all those crazy lines, and this is like it's sort of transposed onto a different franchise, and it fits really well, and I like it.
Well, welcome to the deepest dive on Aaron Lindy. I'm not sure that he worked on Borderlands. He was the lead writer for Battleborn. For Battleborn at Gearbox. So it's fun to see that lineage, but I'm sure he did some work on Borderlands.
He just had been there before Battleborn, but I could, maybe I'm way off.
I don't know, maybe for some DLC or something, but yeah, he'll have to write in and let us know. But I'm a Biggie Boy says, what are the best grunt lines we've heard so far? I heard one grunt bragging about how he was going to be the one to kill me. Then when I stuck him with a plasma grenade, he ran away yelling, "Cheater!" It's very good. I'll just run through all these because there's a lot. Purebred number 6 says, "Oh no, I didn't mean to turn these things on," which is a grunt who's running at you with 2 sticky grenades, which is very good. Let's see. There's also this one from Purebred number 6 saying, "I'm doing it. I'm hitting him," as the grunt is mid-fight with Master Chief. Greg Spencer writes in with, "Yeah, screw you, physics," which was a soldier after a wicked jump in the Razorback vehicle, which is very good. Then also, "You brought a gun to a bigger gunfight, human." These are, so many of the characters in this game, the alien characters, it's just like Saturday morning cartoon characters. It is so goofy. The tone of this game is all over the place. But anyways, Darkfish Day says, "My favorite grunt line so far is, I trained 3 days for this moment." Manic Pixel Dream Boy, "Spartan your way to that, you dead idiot." Zach S says, "I'm done with this whole stinking ring." Let's see. It's like, it is striking that I think the first line of dialogue from a grunt, maybe it's different for everybody, but it was just a grunt saying in my game, he goes like, he got surprised, so I got surprised. And then the one that really made me laugh out loud is grunt yelling, it's flanking time, like very loudly. It's so stupid.
Yeah.
And that was one of the first things I noticed and wrote down too, just because the first ones that I heard, I can't remember what the dialogue was, but it was just them in the background talking to each other. And it was kind of like, it was a level of ambient, like they didn't just feel like targets for me to run out and shoot for the first time. Like they felt like they had their own little lives that they were carrying on with, which is not something I expected from the Halo franchise. And it kind of made them feel more like actual characters instead of just the, mindless grunts that you shoot.
Yeah, it reminded me a lot of Hitman, where you can be sneaking around and you'll like hear a lot of that ambient dialogue. And a lot of time you're supposed to listen to that stuff, but I think here it's obviously more like for flavor. But I think the one that I remember most was after I had died. And I think I heard one of them say like something to the effect of like, I did it, I'm alive and you're not.
Yeah, I'm sure they had debates on the team about like how much is too much for the jokes. And I love that comedy won out in the end. Wade, maybe the Halo super fans on subreddit or somewhere are complaining about like they destroyed the sanctity of Halo, but like grunts have always been silly, but this feels like another layer of silly.
No, from what I remember, so Joe Staten came on last year, obviously, and I remember him saying in an interview that what he tried to impart onto the team was, look, humor is a big part of what Halo was from Halo 1, like just the goofiness of it.
Right.
Some of it was very goofy, and to not shy away from that, to embrace it. I loved the grunts in this game because of the lines we've talked about, but in addition to that, it reminded me of Breath of the Wild, how it carried on so much of what we loved about Zelda and modernized it. And this game, I feel like, did a similar thing. It took what I loved about the grunts from the original Halo, and then just expanded upon it and made it so much more of a fuller experience of what I remember. The line that stuck with me the most, that made me laugh out loud, was it was like in the middle of a firefight, and I had just killed everyone except for this last grunt, and he was around the corner, and he goes, well, time to reap what I sowed. And I kill him, and he goes, bah!
It's beautiful. Yeah, even like Chief, like they give him a couple kind of funny lines or kind of funny moments. Like, there's that line where after you fight Tremonius, the boss fight, Weapon chimes in, it's like, they called him Tremonius. And Chief goes, not anymore. and then she's like, hey, that's almost funny, Chief. Like, way to go. You're like cracking a joke. Like,
yeah. Or there was a big Doom guy reference in the beginning when he's trying to scuttle the ship. And the Pelican pilot's like, oh, you can hack it? Yeah. Nope.
Right. And it is like going back to the original. I mean, we just played Halo 1, and I know that everybody thinks of that as like, oh, there's just a majestic game with this amazing soundtrack, but like there's some really weird, goofy stuff in Halo 1. Like, you remember when like Cortana teleports Chief and he's like teleported in upside down, and it's just like a Looney Tunes bit of him like, blah, like falling in the hallway. It's silly. And I think that happens all the time with franchises. Maybe it's just coming from my love for Final Fantasy VII, of like the further you get from some of those impactful things, as people have tried to milk more and more from the series, you forget that the core of it was not that serious after all, Right. But yeah, the Chief stuff in particular, maybe we could just start right here. There's a couple thoughts on him in general. Rich Carrasco, you know what? That's too specific. We don't need to get into all this stuff. Kyle, this is what I want to talk to you about. As I was playing this, I had an epiphany of, my God, I didn't expect to be having this much fun. I'm enjoying this so much more than I thought. And then my next thought is, oh, Kyle must be over the moon about this game.
Yeah. I'm not over the moon, but
really?
That's not to say I have not had fun or anything like that. I don't know. I think it's because it's from the very first time they showed it, even that demo that got a lot of backlash.
Right.
I saw what, like, my expectation from that hasn't changed playing the game. If that
you
makes
feel
sense.
like I know exactly what this is. Yeah.
Kind of. It's like the grapple shot's going to change things, and I kind of see how the openness works, and it works really well. And I am having a good time. I feel like I came off as negative, but I'm not like, it's open world Halo. It's like kind of delivering on really what Halo, that dropping on the Halo level of Halo 1 felt like, truly, where it's like, it's not really that open. That, I guess, what is it, the second level of Halo 1? But it feels really open. It looks like you could drive off in any direction and get lost. And this, they're actually fully executing on that. So you have this sort of grandeur of like, oh, this really feels like an open area, and it is for the first time, which I'm really enjoying, and it's really cool. Yeah,
at the same time, it's a weird trick where I always run into this problem, and maybe I'm just too used to playing Assassin's Creed or something, but like I always run into the thing of hitting the waypoint on the map to go to the location and being like, all right, get ready for a haul, and then being like, oh no, it's just right there actually. Like the world's so much smaller than I thought, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah. I was going to say that too. It's kind of that it's a small world, like Disney World-esque take on it, where I appreciate playing an open world game where I mark something and I don't have to run for 7 minutes to get there.
Right.
Like having that closeness to everything and having enough, there's still enough spots along the way that it's like, well, there isn't, there isn't an icon on the map for this place, but there are clearly a bunch of aliens there. So I'm just going to kind of check out what the heck happened over there and explore a little bit.
Yeah. And even if you do have to walk a long ways, the grapple shot makes traversal so much more interesting compared to other Halos. It doesn't obviously other games are more fun to traverse, but it really did change the experience quite a lot for me. Once I realized, if I upgrade it, I can use it and then it'll recharge and I can use it again before I'll hit the ground.
Yeah.
Therefore, I am now Spider-Man.
Yeah, there's a mountain in between me and the place that I'm going, and I'm just going to go over the mountain instead of having to try and find a way around it.
Yeah, and you can do like things like trick shots of like, I'm going to grapple, and if I jump at the right moment, I'll catapult myself so much further than normal, and then I'll be able to grapple on the way there, and I can kind of do it again. And so like you have all these like really cool ways to speed up progression. To the point where it's like I found areas that I didn't feel like I was supposed to go to, but I don't know how else I would have gotten there. So there are places where I get to a location and I'm like, I don't know how I was supposed to get here, but because I feel like the way that I got here was through this really like convoluted series of grapples, and I don't know if I'm supposed to be here yet, or if this is just like, hey, you're supposed to grapple your way up this mountain to get to like this secret area, and there will be like a propaganda tower or like some sort of power up there.
Yeah, I feel like it's a great magic trick from games when they can make you feel like, oh, you're breaking the game, but no, you're really not. You're doing exactly what we wanted.
And Breath of the Wild did something very similar, which I think we all appreciated, was like, I don't know if this is the way to solve this problem, but I'm going to try it anyway. But no, to Cyril's point, like I did the same thing where I was stumbling upon things that I didn't know if I was supposed to yet. Like when you emerge from facing the Harbinger the first time.
Yeah.
And she kicks you out of the door. I had found that door previously, but didn't really know what it was. And thought, okay, this is going to come into play later. That's never happened in any Halo game. So I was like, oh, sweet. This is, I don't know, like a Breath of the Wild-ization of Halo, if I may.
I wouldn't say it's like as open, I think, because there are definitely ways in which this game is like, okay, you cannot access this part of the world until you beat this mission, right? To me, it feels less like an open world than like a giant Halo playground, because I don't know that there's you don't get a lot of the like, oh, go over here and then complete this quest and then come back to this person, or like there's not, I wouldn't say that there's a ton of exploration, but I feel like they do a really good job of taking all the stuff that people liked about Halo and just putting that in a bigger playground. And I think that works with the grappling hook, with the way that like, people talk a lot about, the way the Halo encounters are really finely tuned. And like that stuff is here, but in very different ways, because they just highlight every encounter by making it a specific point on the map where you're like, okay, there's a target here that you're supposed, like a high value target here. And all that is just, there's just a bunch of guys that you fight and you kill. Right. And so like they turn these like encounters that I imagine that they spent a lot of time on and just like put them on this map, make it an open area, and say like, you can approach this with a warthog, with guys on your warthog, or you can approach it by yourself with the grappling hook, or you can come in with a ghost. And so they make them like more approachable, like they give you more avenues of approach than in other Halo games, which I think is kind of like what they should have, what like I think works best for this game.
Yeah. You know what comes to mind, which is like the weirdest game to think of, is the original Crackdown, because like the way Crackdown was structured is like you basically had a boss that was like over there. However you can get to him, figure it out. You can get there. And even though like Halo Infinite has very specific, like, all right, you get to this lift and then you go up and you go play a level and you fight a boss. I still like weirdly, it just made me think of Crackdown of like, oh, this is reminiscent of like, I got to kill this guy. Let me figure out how to get there from any direction and then I'll go up there and kill him.
Right. Yeah, somebody wrote in with a comment. I don't think I included this section of the comment, but the gist of it was just like, yeah, I didn't think that what I wanted after all these years was Far Cry Halo. But it turns out that's kind of what I wanted. And like, Kyle, I was thinking about your take on Pokemon Legends Arceus, which I feel like you'll eat your words, but you're like, if it's not a real open world, stinky doo-doo, I think was your quote from the podcast. You're like, it needs to actually be a fully open world, none of this open region crap. And then I thought of this, like, this is basically an open region game, but it doesn't feel like it.
I mean, not to talk about Pokemon too much, but I don't want that Monster Hunter structure, and this is not a Monster Hunter structure. You know, Master Chief's not really going back to a home base to dump materials to make new armor. He just stays out in the open world and goes from point to point.
Right.
But we'll see.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting, like, how they present the map for the first time once you pop out there into the open world. I wish... maybe for sections of it was more of an emphasis just on exploration, because, like, you know, we've made the Breath of the Wild comparison several times, but that is, and I'm sure people are sick of it, and I apologize, but like, the beauty obviously is just, hey, the mission, defeat Ganon, go. We'll shut up now, by and large. Whereas this one, it's like, all right, bringing up the map, and then weapons just walking through it and going like, okay, there's this thing over here, there's this thing over here, there's this thing over here, which, you know, I think those are really fun things to explore out of the gate, but it is just weird and telling that it's a different design sensibility to be like, here are the 5 options to begin with and go, where I felt like you kind of wanted to get out there and just roam around on your own and find that stuff on your own.
Yeah, that's why I think that to me it feels like Halo with a bigger playground than an open world game. Like so far, I haven't felt like this game has like that kind of discoverability aspect as much, where you're like, because right now I'm not super compelled to like go out of my way to find things that aren't like highlighted on my map, right? So like the loop is you go to an FOB and that shows you a bunch of icons on your map that you can go, you know, pursue, and those are really good because like they give you very tangible rewards, most of them, like here's a new weapon, or here's like the upgrade points. I forget what they call them.
Right.
Like, that you fully dump into the grapple shot and don't use any other weapon.
100%.
We're all on the same page there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like you'll get those things, but in terms of like, oh, I found this hidden alcove and there was all this cool stuff in here that that here's just the thing. I haven't found too much of that, and like something about the way the world is designed doesn't like, I don't see like the like obvious like, oh, here's a here's like kind of like the breadcrumb trail to a secret, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't see that as much here, but maybe that's just because I'm not very good at looking. Like I haven't found a single skull yet, so maybe I should be looking more deeply, but I feel like I'm getting what I want out of it just by like going to the map and not necessarily going out of my way to explore it too much.
I hear you, and maybe I need to poke around a little bit more as well. But yeah, I was wondering, like, God, should they have done, and not to us to second guess every design decision, but it's like, I wonder what it would feel like if it was kind of the Forza Horizon barn find. Like, here's just a radius, and you'll find one of the lockers with the multiplayer cosmetics in there, just to encourage a little bit more of just free roaming and exploring.
On that note, if you do highlight one of the Spartan cores or the armor upgrades, cosmetic upgrades, and you go to that area, it sometimes doesn't show exactly where it is. It just shows the area, and as you get close enough, the waypoint will disappear, and then you have to discover it. It's not that hard because your scanner will show you.
Right.
Although sometimes it will be like underground or above you somewhere, so you do have to search a little bit for that.
Yeah.
It's like I would liken it to Doom, where it's like, oh, I can see that power up, it's behind this gate, I got to figure out the other passageway. Some of them are like that, and those ones are enjoyable, but yeah, I mean it varies because a lot of them are out in the open. I would agree that the breadcrumb trail is kind of light, but for a Halo game it's pleasant.
It's still fun.
I feel like that
it's
qualifier is going to be coming up a lot for a Halo game. But no, I mean I would say the environmental storytelling is probably the best it's been in the series. I really enjoyed, like, when you come across the audio diaries, half the time it'll be like in this makeshift abandoned encampment from the UNSC troopers that have had to abandon it because they got killed recently or something like that. Yeah. It's not Bioshock level, but it's still pretty good.
Yeah, Alex Mauve here writes in over on Patreon and says, I love all the little satisfying touches in the game. The sound that plays when you find an audio log is so gratifying. Makes me listen carefully for those ping noises. The audio logs, I don't think I was expecting it in the game, and it really makes me laugh, the idea of the Banished recording all these, because they aren't like letting their guard down. Even when they're like talking to themselves, it's still like, Dear Diary, just like so over the top, stupid.
I will break the zealots.
Yeah, it is. I will say specifically to the noise that audio logs make. There is a thing where I don't know if it's just me, but there is a noise that you make when you unpause the map menu that sounds to me almost exactly like a ping from those audio logs. So almost every time I close the map, I'm like, wait, is there one nearby? And it's like, no, it's just you just unpause the game. I don't know if anyone else ran into that, but it's been driving me insane.
Yeah, I can see that. I see the markings on the walls behind you. It's really doing a number. Mitch here submits a comment and says, just on the topic of exploration stuff, it's possible to get to the top of the tower, one of the early mission locations, with the upgraded grappling hook. After some carefully aimed swings, I was able to make it up there and found a skull along with an Easter egg, Banished-style musical instruments, a guitar, keyboard, and microphone, and a vinyl pointing fun at Craig, the brute from the 2020 demo. The level of freedom of movement you can achieve with the hook makes me feel like a speedrunner, and I'm loving this game so far.
Yeah, he there's also a poster that is basically he did a tour, I guess, and it lists like all the tour locations that he went.
So
on.
good.
I did that too, and it was another one of those situations where it's like I climbed up as high as I could on the tower, and then there was a huge overhang to it, and just kind of some little like posts sticking down. I was like, man, I wonder if I can grapple onto that and then flip around as I'm flipping past it and get back. And it was one of those things of like, are you even supposed to be? Am I like doing QA work for 343 right now? But when I got up there, they had hid something up there, so it's like it's the best of both worlds.
And that was so satisfying because I have never been able to find skulls in a Halo game without looking them up. I just feel like skulls aren't for me. I'm not one of the people who can just like go into every square inch of the geometry of every level looking for these things or try and break the geometry bound somehow. So the fact that I could go to the top of this tower and feel rewarded like a Korok seed or something was like, oh yeah, this is actually really nice. I like this. This is satisfying.
Yeah. The first time where I realized really the potential of the grappling hook, and maybe it's right after I got the upgrade, but there was a Spartan upgrade in this spot that was, I don't think the same tower that they're talking about here, but it was still like a tall tower. And that was when I realized like, okay, I can actually just keep shooting it and keep actually climbing this thing, which is very liberating. And then it was kind of like, if I looked down again, it was kind of like a glass floor. It was outside, but I could see that there were people down there, and that's where the upgrade point, I think, was. Does anybody know the spot that I'm talking about? Because I couldn't figure out how to get in there.
I think I've gotten that one, yeah.
There was a door on the side of the mountain, but I couldn't open it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I've been inside there.
How do I open that?
There's basically another entrance. Yeah, it's on the bottom floor is what I'll say. You have to go down, and then there's like a hidden entrance down there on the floor level.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's not the door that you mentioned on the side of it. Like there's basically one, let's say, on the opposite side of that door.
So you're saying I need to shut up and just do more exploring, the thing that I was complaining I'm not doing enough in the game yet?
Yeah, I think
I see.
Yes, but I also think like what I mentioned about the breadcrumb trail earlier stuff is that like I think the game is maybe at its worst when it kind of trusts you to do that stuff of like when you go to a base and they're like, oh, you have to activate this thing, but you know the key like this building is like it's basically 4 walls, but you have to find the hidden entrance somewhere in order to activate the lock or whatever. I feel like that's maybe the weakest part of the game is trying to like puzzle solve in a Halo game, which I'm like not super used to. But I think like otherwise, I think for the most part, it kind of does show you like, okay, this door opens by activating this switch that's like on the other side, but it'll very clearly telegraph most of that stuff.
Right.
I feel like that scanner, that down on the D-pad, takes you a long way. Like it is really very.
It does a lot of work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I know you said, Kyle, you hadn't played Halo 5. That is an extension from Halo 5 is when they introduced that mechanic, which it was not really used very well in that game. This feels more fleshed out.
I would tap down on the D-pad in multiplayer, and the way the animation looks, it looks like you take damage almost because it's kind of crackly as it goes out.
Oh.
So I was like, I don't know what this is, and I stopped using it in multiplayer because I was like, am I like doing something to my shield? So
yeah.
No, so it's funny playing the single player game where it's like press down to scan. I was like, oh yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense.
BeatenDownBrian here submits a comment and says, hey, I'm just curious how everyone has been traversing the map. Surprisingly, I found myself on foot 95% of the time. I'm just having so much fun finding little secrets that aren't marked on the map that it feels like I'd be blowing by all that stuff if I chose to travel by vehicle. Yeah, I'm kind of mongoose or
I
foot.
like getting on the mongoose.
I do too.
Like it's I don't want to do the warthog, but the mongoose I like because it's small, and I don't mind abandoning it the moment it gets in the way. I'm like, all right, get out of here.
Which is like 20 seconds after you spawn it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
like,
basically,
okay.
I just take it off a ramp and flip it upside down. I'm like, oh, that was fun. All right, grapple shot time.
Yeah, I'm all about the Razorback Warthog. That thing I hated in multiplayer, but in campaign, it's awesome. You load it up with 5 Marines, sniper rifle, rockets, shotgun, whatever, and you drive into an encampment. They will take out everybody. You just got to drive in circles, and it's great. It's like the Marines are so useful and so helpful this time. Plus, they got great quips. I really like the Marines, and they like treat Chief with like a reverence that's uplifting and kind of inspires you to, keep playing and rescue them. It's a nice little loop.
Yeah. The Razorback makes me laugh because it's like a heavily fortified warthog. It's still a convertible, but oh man, that armor is unbelievable for those certain sections. Like, what kind of Humvee is this?
No, the air is like extra dense around it though.
Oh, smart.
Those open parts.
Kind of like the Dune shield around it.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
you can do the voice in it.
Rules. Let's see. Joshua Duproy says, the only Halo game I've ever played was Halo 3 back in the day, so maybe I'm just not used to them. But does anyone else think the vehicles in this game control kind of terrible? I can't go 30 seconds without flipping over or ramming into some minuscule tree due to collision. Yeah, that's Halo, baby.
That's
welcome to the franchise.
I mean, going all the way back to the beginning, because we flipped warthogs in multiplayer, and fun.
Well, you hit a point of acceptance with it, like, and it took, for me, like it took playing Halo 1 and just understanding that it's imperfect on purpose, and you come to terms with that and you embrace it, but you have to like be willing to embrace that chaos.
It is, I mean, jumping on a mongoose, it is just, all right, start the countdown clock until something silly happens and it makes me laugh. Like, until it's just some rock launches me in some stupid way, and then, hey, no harm done. Now I'm going to go on foot. And hopefully the Marines don't stop respecting Master Chief once they see his four-wheeling skills.
Oh, they're going to be like, whoa, that was sick.
Andrew Burns writes in over on Patreon and says, the Marines kick ass in this game. Hearing what you said, Wade. I've also made a little mini game out of trying to keep them alive as long as possible. But in Infinite, I actually see them taking out brutes and picking up their weapons and stuff. Hell yeah.
Yeah. There's really nice, almost emergent storytelling moments where I'll like rescue a squad of Marines and then try and keep them alive. I'll go on foot and we'll, go take out an FOB, or I don't know, just go on little like side missions with this squad. It's really cool.
Yeah.
Serial, do you feel similarly about the Marines? Have you had
I think they are, for the most part, they're pretty good.
You're setting it up like you've done a pre-interview for a late night show or something, Kyle.
No,
we're talking backstage.
He tweeted something recently that made me laugh very hard related to the Marines. It's like a little video clip. I'll set you up for that.
Yeah, because you have those boxes where you can like after you take out certain camps, you can like get special weapons and stuff. And so I tried to take a shotgun, but as soon as it popped up on the thing, one of the Marines took it and ran off basically. Right in front
I
of
love
me.
that clip.
Thanks, Chief.
I had one where I saved a bunch of guys, and I punched the little energy shackles that they were in, and then I shot all the aliens that were attacking them, and then I drove off because I went to go get a Spartan core, but it was on the side of a cliff, and I kind of looked down on it, and all the Marines just like jumped over the cliff into oblivion, trying to get to it with me. I was like, okay.
Well,
sorry guys.
I didn't promise you a life. Shane C. submits a comment on Patreon and says, I wish I loved anything as much as UNSC soldiers love standing directly under a vehicle drop and getting flattened by a warthog. Yeah, they're having a good time. It's fine. It's weird that I don't know if it's weird or appropriate that, they definitely kiss Chief's ass, which, I mean, they also did in the first one. It was still that same tone of just like, wow, the Master Chief, he's here, a Spartan. But I love that Chief never really talks to them, right? Is there any dialogue of Chief talking to just the soldiers you save?
Not that I've noticed, no.
It's the weird thing with Chief in this game is I feel like they're trying hard to, humanize him in some ways. And then in other areas, it's just like the complete opposite. I don't know, Wade, we could go either direction with the comments here, but what have you noticed on Chief's personality this time around?
I really like his personality. There was some criticism, I think it's warranted, with 343's version of Chief, where he's a lot more melodramatic than he used to be. 4 didn't really bother me. 5 is where it kind of went off the rails, where he's I mean, he's still Chief, but he's pretty melodramatic at times, and this one brought that way down. He's way more. I mean, when he's like in the beginning, he's talking to the Pelican AI. You know, you have a message. He's like, read. He just like responds with these quick one
status report
responses. Yeah. But so there's that really nice like, or when he's talking to Echo 216. Who's like, we got to get out of here. No, we do our duty. We protect humanity. He's just like, he's back in his element, which is really nice. Also, and people pointed this out with the one of the newer trailers, Chief has this really noticeable respect to other members of the military when he handles the Marines in the vacuum of space. He's very gentle with them. When you see the dead Spartan armor, he has this like sadness towards it. You can really feel when you get to the top of the tower and you talk to that Spartan who's dying. It's actually kind of a heartfelt moment for the Chief, which I'm not really used to. And despite him not really emoting, you can like his emotions are so subtle. You can really feel that he's feeling something, even though he's not expressing it. Yeah. So I really like what they did with Chief in this game so far.
Yeah. Rich Carrasco wrote it about that. And he's saying how much it humanizes the Chief. And especially, when he's touching the shoulders of the dead Spartans and stuff. It is the classic video game problem of pairing that with it's exciting for us because like, ooh, a dead Spartan, new equipment. You know, like we're being rewarded every time we're supposed to have this sad moment. It doesn't exactly quite even out. But yeah, let's see. We had.
I like the way he talks because like to me it feels like he just skips to the last word of a conversation. Like every time something like the weapon. I don't know if she has a different name, but the weapon will talk to him, and it seems like she's like, hey, let's have a conversation. But then he just skips to the last thing he would have said. And then that's like enough. Like that gets the point across.
Right. Let's see. We got Steven Swirsky who writes in and says, I'm interested where the story ends up. Currently, I feel like they're really painting Master Chief in a negative light. Every interaction with the pilot ends up with me feeling that I'm supposed to think Master Chief is a jerk. He doesn't care at all about the poor pilot and his family. He just wants to complete his mission at any cost. This makes me honestly really dislike Master Chief, so I'm curious if that's intentional. Is it just my personal takeaway? I mean, it is. There are weird beats where, Chief, he's like, hey, new plan, scuttle the ship. And then the pilot's like, I'm going to die here. It's just silence from Chief. There's no like, I'll get you through this, soldier. It's just like, he doesn't even care enough to ask him what his name is at this point, right?
Yeah, for me, it's been this mixed ride of like with those two characters specifically of like, I totally get where 216 is coming from of like, I'm not prepared for this at all. We need to leave. And him being like this kind of character that is, trying to stop the entire game from happening of like, no, I want to like the whole point of this game is to go out and explore this thing. And he's like, no, I want to prevent the entire scenario from happening. So it's like, obviously he's not going to get his way, but like, I sympathize with the need of like, okay, you can do your Master Chief thing, but I want to go. And like the fact that they haven't, it does feel like they're setting it up for, them coming to like ahead and then him abandoning him or something and then coming back heroically at some point. But it does seem like that is their one dynamic is like, I'm a coward and I want to go. And Master Chief's like, no, we got to do Halo things. And then that's been their whole dynamic so far.
Right.
Well, I guess I would be more willing someone that doesn't deify him. Like I like that there's someone who's like, look, you're not that great. Okay, you're cool, but like you're not that.
It's more like, I like Spartans, but he even says like, why did I have to pick up a Spartan? Like I regret this so much. This was such a stupid idea.
Yeah, I got the sense when he said we're going home in the beginning, like, oh, this is someone really important. Not he's going to get me home. He's just this is an important enough person to where we can leave. I would be more willing to hear him out though if it didn't seem like there was no way to leave. Like you're in a Pelican, great. What are you going to do with that? So I think right when they crash, he says there's condors out here. I'm going to see if they have a slip space drive. So it's like, okay, that makes sense. Go look for a way home. But before that, it didn't really seem like there was a way that they could get home.
Yeah. Right. Well, that's also the point where Chief throws him a bone. He's like, hey, man, he's like talking to a kid, he's like the divorced dad talking to the son where he's like, look, after this, we'll do this together. Don't worry. I'll make this up to you. We'll go look through rubble together. We'll find that thing we need. It's going to be a great time.
Yeah. And it's been like, honey, look, we can't fly when there are anti-aircraft guns out there. Look, honey, we'll take care of them and then we'll go get your toy. All right.
It's such a small little moment, but I like, I forget after the second mission, but when Chief is floating in space again, and the Pelicans flying in. And like, you're floating in space for a little while. It's just that first person view. And then 216, Echo 216, is that his name? He comes flying in and he's like, Chief! And then Chief just goes, I'm here. Like in the most calm voice. But I love that idea that like, even when Chief is thrown out into the abyss of space for the 300th time, I think in Halo lore, and he's just floating there. I love he's not panicked in the least. Just like, yeah, over here, buddy. It's just like as calm as can be. But that's just what he does, man. Oh, well, no, let's hit this. Daniel Botang, a simple question. Anyone else notice that Chief has already spoken more in this game than all the other Halos combined? I definitely feel like I have a better sense of him as a character. Do you think so?
I don't know. I mean, Halo 4, he talks a lot because it's mostly just him and Cortana. I mean, they have a lot of conversations in Halo 4.
Okay. All right. Maybe just the early ones. Yeah. Brad writes in and says, I've always really liked Steve Downes' performance as the voice of Master Chief. He knows just when to add in the pathos for the character that clearly keeps everything and anything even resembling emotion hidden away. That said, recently I started to look up the actor's career. Sure that he has had a long and fruitful one as a voice actor, and it turns out he really hasn't. He's only ever really played Master Chief in all of his game appearances, including Super Bomberman R. Don't forget about that gem. He played a character called Gunnar in a Monolith published RPG called Septerra Core Legacy of the Creator. Jeff, do you remember that when we all learned about the Legacy of the Creator?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And strangely, Marvel's Star-Lord in one episode of an Avengers cartoon. I really love his performance, and now I find it even more unique and special due to how closely associated his voice is to almost the only character he's ever done. That's a nice way of looking at it. This guy's just all in on this one iconic character. And his voice is so distinct. I wonder if there's a little bit of that kind of like David Hayter around Metal Gear Solid 4. Even like when Witcher 3 came out, some people were like, I know it's the voice of Geralt, but the legacy thing, I wonder if we could do better. Do you think there's any people out there that are ready for a different voice at this point?
Of Master Chief?
Are you
insane?
It's impossible. It's impossible to replace. Maybe I've just been so burned as a Metal Gear fan where it's like, well, you can throw anybody away eventually, right?
No.
Yeah, I didn't think so. I didn't think so either.
I think it would be like a Kermit situation where it's like, okay, we got a new person. They sound exactly like the last person to the point where you can't tell. Like they would hold auditions for the best sound alike to replace him with.
Right.
That seems more reasonable because you don't see his face, so all you have is his voice.
That's all we got.
And Hanson, I'm sure you feel similarly about Metal Gear, right? Like you would. I'm sorry. Who played Snake? I can't remember
David
the actor's
Hayter.
name right
How
now.
dare you?
No. The in 5.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Kiefer Sutherland.
Like, fine performance. Happy with that performance. Kiefer Sutherland's a great actor, but like I would throw him away for David Hayter in a heartbeat. Like no question.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
Don't you feel the same way?
Yeah, I guess you're right. Yep. I suppose so. Yeah, I like there's a little moment too, just a little Chief line that really made me laugh where it's Basis, like the boss that you're fighting, and it's like a first person cutscene and he's just kicking Chief's ass. And then Weapon just goes, Chief? And then Chief just goes, I see him. Just like as he's getting his ass kicked, like I just in that moment, I was like, yes, I am aware that there is a bad person here. I'm being annihilated, which I guess kind of ties into the opening of the game, which is very opening of Avengers Infinity War, where it's just Chief getting his ass kicked on the ship in a very confusing way. But Wade, going into this game, do you feel like you had a good sense of where it was starting, or were you also confused about what's happening here?
This is a really interesting thing because this almost feels like 343's third time starting fresh. Because they haven't really... Yeah. I mean, this takes place after Halo 5 and the events continue after that, but not in the sense of like Empire Strikes Back to Return of the Jedi, where it's like a direct continuation of all these threads. It's like there's really a lot of restarting happening in the same way they almost restarted with Halo 5. So it's really kind of tough to see this as... I don't know, maybe they don't build it as a trilogy, but it's getting a little hard because a lot of 343's games feel like the first act of a larger story, and I think this is feeling like that too. I did like it though because, I mean, after Halo 5, I thought I was done being a Halo fan. I was like, I don't know if this series is for me anymore. I don't like where the story's going. I don't like the art style anymore. I don't like the gameplay, and those are the three things I care about with Halo.
Oh God!
But now we've got the art style, which is back to original art style. The UNSC logo, the Reach assault rifles, Master Chief's armor's back to Halo 3 style. The Marine suit armor's back to Halo Reach. I mean, they've reverted The frigates, they changed the frigate design. Now it's back to the old Bungie design.
Interesting.
So much has returned back to the Halo I remember. The gameplay, we've talked about this on the MinnMax show. We talked about the multiplayer. I love the gameplay. It's feeling back to where Halo should be. And then the story, the third thing, the thing that I'm most critical for 343 about the story. In my mind, it would take a Herculean effort to save the story after Halo 5, after that bungle of a disastered ending. I think that this was probably the best thing they could have done after that fact. They used a really cool villain they built in Halo Wars 2, an established sort of conflict that was coming to a head with the Banished.
Wait, real quick. Were the Banished in Halo 5 or they were established in Halo Wars 2?
Halo Wars 2.
Yeah, Halo Wars 2.
That's so cool.
Right, cool.
I love that an RTS is getting its due of like, hey, you want to learn how they are? Play an RTS, everybody.
There's specifically a cutscene in Halo Wars 2 that I think everyone listening to this should watch because
it is
Yes, it is 100% his origin story of like, oh, he was like a ringer that the Covenant used to just kill. Like he was like frontline soldiers of brutes, and almost all of them would die. And so he kept getting sent out on those deployments because his troops were the troops that are meant to be suicide soldiers to open up the front lines.
Interesting.
And so that kept happening to him, and so he got angry at the Covenant, and they established him in Halo Wars 2 as like, oh yeah, the Covenant had two enemies during those years. It was us, which they almost killed, and Atriox, which they didn't even come close to beating him.
Ooh, that's fun.
And so like they established all this hero or this like bad guy in that game. And then like it just seems like in the the wreckage of Halo 5 story, like Halo 343 just kind of like, I guess he's as good as bad guy as we're gonna get, so let's just grab him and just basically do very little work in establishing who he is to people who have not played Halo Wars 2.
That's a good point. If you're not familiar with Halo Wars 2, it's kind of confusing who he is. I hadn't thought of that. But there's an interesting parallel with the Banished and Atriox and the Spartans. The Spartans were sent on suicide missions. A lot of them were. But so with Halo 5, it felt like a good place to start. And I really liked that you brought up Infinity War. I really liked that start to it where you start the game 6 months after this event trying to piece things together, almost like a BioShock game, where it's like, I got to figure out the things that I was supposed to be here for that I missed, and now it's all a disaster.
I hear you, but I think the difference there is, Booker DeWitt in BioShock Infinite there, he doesn't have some secret plan that we're not aware of. He's also like, what is happening in this world, right?
Yeah.
And I think the issue
the player is kind of too. The player really doesn't know. Well, I guess he knows the plan was to delete Cortana, but
well, that's what I'm confused about. It's like, when Chief is like, we got a new plan. I need to go over here and collect this weapon. I mean, to have that disconnect between the player and Chief is a little bit more jarring of like, how much am I supposed to be knowing as Master Chief? And then there's also references to like, what, did you hit your head, Chief? Come on. And so how much am I supposed to be aware of what Master Chief knows right now is my question.
True. No, that's true. Like that was one of the things that I think Bungie did so well that 343 doesn't quite hit the mark on. With Halo 1, it's like, here's Cortana, get her off the ship. Next level.
Right.
Get the Marines, get them to safety. Every mission is like, hey, you do this thing.
Yes.
With this game, it's like you're not really clear what you're supposed to do from the get-go.
Yeah, and I think that they have the story structure of like, I don't know, maybe there's like an extra contextual layer where like, because the reception to 5 was so bad, like them kind of basically skipping a game in a way, like it feels like an entire Halo game happened between besides Halo Wars 2, that like an entire Halo 6 happened between this and 5 and Infinite, and they just basically skip that entire game, and then you're kind of getting it through backstory of finding those audio logs of like, here's what happened while you were away, and it's like in this game it kind of strikes me as a little bit like we want to avoid anything to do with Halo 5 directly, but we did write a whole story for it, so here it is, and so like now it just feels like you're piecing together this story, but like in the context of like, because no one liked Halo 5, we're going to try to avoid it.
I think it's less that. I think what they're doing, is starting with the in media res thing, and so I think the second half of the game is going to be filling that stuff in. So it's not like they're jumping ahead. It's just structurally they want to tell this story, just makes it more confusing.
But I think the reason that they're like, in part, maybe the reason they're doing that is so that like, because people hated the story of 5 so much,
I see.
that they jump ahead to like, okay, we had all this thing planned, but like we want to start a new arc here, but we can't just like we have to kind of fill in some of the gaps here. So I feel like it ends up feeling pretty messy, but it like you understand why they did it, right? Because like you would expect after the end of Halo 5 for like, okay, Cortana's the big bad and we have to go deal with her, and that's sort of still the case, but she's kind of in the background because Atriox is here, and they'll allude to like, well, what happened with Cortana? We'll find out later, but right now we want to set up a new scenario so you're not thinking about Halo 5 at all, basically.
It's the other M approach, if you will.
Oh, and we won't
just pretend this one didn't happen.
No, it is.
Although there's like that nice subtle thing with Escharum where he says in memory of Atriox, like it's not explicitly called out, but they're like in his honor, like Atriox, hear these words, subtle but nice of like, hey, things have transpired since Atriox threw you off the ship.
Okay, this is what I'm confused about as well. So Joe Chefkinski writes in and says, what the hell? I spent hours making sure I was up on my Halo lore leading up to the launch, and then they just conclude the Cortana saga off screen? They jumped right from Empire to Force Awakens without doing Jedi, which I think is absolutely how it feels. Combine that with the fact that they didn't even bother naming your two companions, and I can't help but think 343 is putting the story doesn't matter in huge blinking lights right up front. I think that's a very negative read on what's happening, Joe. I think you're right, Serial. The more I think about it, you're right. It's like there is a messy runway of Halo 5 mop-up to do, and they're trying to just leapfrog everybody over that for just what's the cleanest story we can tell at this point. Yeah. And it is, hey, the Banished are bad, and they're really scary, and Chief got his ass kicked by him, but he's going to stop them. Okay, now second half of that game, now let's go back and run through that rubble.
Right, and it's like I feel like they would just do the Star Wars scroll of like, okay, Cortana's been defeated and now Atriox is taking over. Like they would do that if there was a non-cheesy way to do that, But like I am interested in the Cortana stuff because like I don't hate Halo 5. I feel like that's my like contrarian Halo 5 Halo opinion is that I actually kind of like Halo 5.
You're welcome.
But for story reasons, I think is the weakest part of Halo 5 is the story. But I think it left it in an interesting place. But I want to see that. But it's like this Atriox thing is like, okay, here's an identifiable bad guy that feels like it is hearkening back to like Halo 1. Like here's a big bad that you want to kill. So Wade, do you have any insight into that idea of Atriox being dead? I mean, I assume he's not really dead, right? Unless it's some weird thing where like, did Halo Wars 2 happen in that 6-month gap? And Atriox dies in that or something?
That was prior to this.
Okay.
But I guess it is unclear at this point. We don't really know. I guess I took it at face value. I have other friends who say, nope, no corpse, no death.
100%.
If you don't see it. But I mean, this is a different kind of Halo game. It's telling a different kind of story where there are events that happen off screen that, like the weapon says Cortana's been deleted. I'm like, okay, she's been deleted. Now I continue. Although that a little skeptical on because, we were to believe Cortana was dead after Halo 4 as well. And then,
well, also it was a thing of, but then she would be deleted as well because she'd be mission complete. The weapon. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So that is unreliable if she says that Cortana's been deleted. But no, I mean, I guess when they say Atriox is gone, I accept that because that's what the story wants me to believe. So
okay,
I'll go with it.
But if you're a gambling man,
I feel like I missed something major. Why do we think Atriox is dead? I thought he just kicked you off the ship and that was that.
He did. But
that's that. I mean, Escherum's in control and references indirectly that he's dead, that he's passed on.
And I think it's in audio logs as well. But it's been referenced a couple times.
In the hologram messages in the early levels, Escharum is like talking to Atriox and looking up and holding his hands up.
In your honor, Atriox, that type of thing. Jeffem, no shame here because I had to go back and look at footage just to double check stuff. Hand to God, did you understand that Atriox and Escharum were different breeds?
I think, I know you asked Jeffem, but that's why I got confused. That's why I asked that question just now. Okay. All right.
I did, but only because I think the first time when they started showing the other one, he was talking about Atriox. And so I was still very confused. Right. Also, I will just to point out how the line I had is Asterix is a space gorilla ? And that was me trying to make sense.
That was my biggest question. Are they going to answer that? Is he a space gorilla?
And just in case you're wondering,
Chief, it was all very confusing. And honestly, as a criticism,
you can answer that.
You can hear that?
Yeah, of course we can. For your phone from 2003 ringing next to you.
I can't turn it off either. I hope my mom picks it up soon. I probably should have mentioned I'm podcasting from my parents' house for reasons, but
can your mom come on the mic?
No,
afraid
she
of
can't.
Atriox? Are you afraid to get you? Is that why you're hiding?
Anyway, my one criticism is that line that Serial told us about how the Banished were, they were the other enemy of the Covenant stuff. That is the most interesting story stuff I've heard so far, and I wish it had been in this game.
Yes.
Yeah, they really should have just copied that MP4 and put it in this game. I really think it's very important to the story of this game.
I'm sure it looked good.
Well, there's an interesting thing with the Banished, because I agree they should have set up the Banished better in this game. The post-war Banished are a little different. They, instead of being that bloodthirsty front lines group, they're more like pirates, like post-war pirates. They band together all species together to, like, without dogma, without the Covenant dogma. There's even I don't think in Infinite this is the case, but before Infinite, there were even some humans as part of the Banished.
Oh, that's
it was like
cool.
this all-inclusive group. Like, if you believe in freedom and plunder or whatever the hell they do, like, it was kind of piratey in that sense. And then
It was like a
I don't
punk
know
rock move.
exactly. So, but anyway, because I was really curious, I'm like, you know what? I don't know if I buy the Banished, because the Arbiter is famous for dealing with rebels within the Covenant. And the prophets say without the Arbiter, the Covenant would have fallen long ago. So how can we allow for this retconning of this big group that they couldn't even destroy? How did it not just completely collapse the Covenant, the Banished? So I guess, I don't know if they strictly address that point, but it makes sense to me that it's this, like, it's this really successful group of mercenaries that, maybe aren't directly at war with the Covenant during that time, but post-war they really expand by swelling the ranks with people, aliens from the Covenant that still wanted to kill humans.
Yeah. Luke Strain has a perfect question. Are the Banished low-key people eaters? I heard a grunt say, "Where are you? I'm angry, hungry, and ready to kill." I also heard a brute say, "Tonight we feast," after killing me. Are they feasting on Master Chief? I feel like it should have been mentioned in a more official capacity. If you're curious, then Biscuit replied to that comment and said, yes, they are, especially the brutes. Oh. One of the hit targets that you can find is actually called the Devourer because he was known for eating the humans he killed. So there we go. That's all we know about the Banished is they love screaming and eating people. Ampix,
that huge sandwich that is like hidden in one of those caves, that weird Easter egg. That's
what is that?
Meat up in that thing.
I didn't find that thing.
It's just a strange Easter egg.
It's so bizarre. Ampex Infinite writes in and says, "It has always bothered me how Halo has handled villains in recent games. They never survive from one game to the other. The Didact from Halo 4 was killed off in a comic. Is that true?" Anyways,
yeah. So we're led to believe he dies in the end of Halo 4, but he didn't really. Then he dies later in the comic.
Wow.
It's a whole thing.
Okay,
like
and
kind of like Darth Maul situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And forgive me for this pronunciation, but Jul Madama was killed.
Julamdama.
Thank you. Was killed in
Julamdama?
Jul Jeff. What is it again? Help us out.
Lamadama?
That's right. Abdullah Lamagada was killed in a few seconds by Fireteam Osiris in the opening mission of Halo 5. And I guess Cortana, in a way, isn't the villain anymore either, but it makes me happy that Atriox from Halo Wars 2 got a moment to shine in the opening of this game, because he's one of the stronger Halo villains, in my opinion, and I'm glad they gave him more time in the spotlight, at least. And what an awesome first cinematic. Hell yeah. Another robot writes in and says, "I don't know what's going on, but after finding out from the weapon that the Banished have paws, I've been fighting the urge to protect them at all costs." Very good point. Hey man, that's fine. This is the problem. I think with the story in the first half of this game so much, other than, and I understand I'm an idiot. I read like a Halo lore recap up until this point. And that's my context going in and all this stuff. But other than the idea that we need to take down the Banished and find out what happened to Cortana in this world post 5, I could not really tell you what's going on. Like all these little beats, the characters screaming about the endless, all these things. I understand there are a lot of teases, but it's confusing, and I don't think it's confusing in like a Halo lore kind of way. I think it's confusing in a narrative structure kind of way, right?
Yeah.
Wade?
Yeah. And I totally agree. And it's probably the weakest part of the game for me so far, in that 343 has this problem where they want to set up a compelling story and not give too much away and leave some mystery for the future, but they know everything about the Halo universe, including all the lore. So it feels like they're setting it up for that for them, not for the people who only play this game or the games in general, because there is a lot of lore about Zeta of Halo, this installation.
Oh, really?
You don't know about it if you don't read the books. Yeah, so... But 343 has done a lot of work to incorporate the sci-fi universe built in the Forerunner book trilogy.
Okay.
Including in this game. Zeta Halo is the oldest Halo. It's the only surviving Halo from the original array. There were 2 arrays. And the older one, Zeta Halo, there was a lot of crazy stuff that went down on this ring over the years, let me tell you. Involving the Human Covenant War, involving Mendicant Bias, the Forerunner AI that went rampant and decided to rebel against the Forerunner that eventually culminated in their downfall.
A Mendicant Bias? What?
Mendicant Bias.
Mendicant Bias, okay.
Why
there was
do you need him to repeat that?
I'm sorry. I was
the Primordial, which called itself the Last Precursor, which essentially was a proto-Gravemind, was brought to this ring as a prisoner. Mendicant Bias was ordered to question it and eventually got turned over to the dark side, if you will, and decided to go rebel against the Forerunner. And there's so much more history on this ring that's really fascinating, but they don't really tell it to you in the game.
Well, I'm almost thankful, honestly, just coming in somewhat fresh, because I'm sure there's Easter eggs in there and nods and the audio logs and stuff, but I'm still struggling just to understand the basic setup other than Banished Bad.
Yeah.
Nicholas West writes in and says, my question is, what was your personal breaking point in terms of Halo lore and capitalized nouns? I think mine was the Didact in Halo 4. As much as I was actually kind of rolling with the narrative in Infinite, the character named the Harbinger showing up just reminded me of all the parts of the story that I find grating. Yeah, Harbinger was kind of that lady at the end.
Yeah, whenever I see a name like that, or a name like the Endless, or when people say, we have to stop them, or her, or some vague entity that we're not sure about, I just kind of have to roll my eyes, because I know it's the writer deliberately trying to be mysterious for sake of, we'll tell you later. Right. And it just doesn't feel like how people would talk in that scenario. So,
sure.
I mean, I like some of the names I've been writing down, like Despondent Pyre is a character.
Which, by the way, Kyle, do you know who's the performer, the actor for Despondent Pyre?
No.
Our dear friend of the show, Sarah Almalay from The Deepest Dive on Mass Effect.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That'll be her new nickname we'll use for her. I'll definitely
Non-stop,
remember it. And then the other one that I was just like, I got to write that down was Adjutant Resolution.
Hell yeah.
That's a name? All right, cool.
I love it. This is AI at the end, right? Yeah. So there's that line where... Sharam, I think, he's screaming, he's like, the Banished will not bow to no one, not the Covenant, not the Prophets, not her.
Yeah.
And that's a Cortana reference?
Who
knows?
I thought that was... I guess I thought that was...
Or is that Harbinger?
It could be. Yeah, it's not clear. And that's why I wish they would be clear.
Right.
Because there's nothing to be gained by that level of mystery. It's like, just say who you're talking about.
Well, it's narrative drama. Sandshrew writes in, he says, why do they want to fire the rings? They know what they do, right? The Covenant wanting to fire them was believable because they thought it was going to take them to their version of heaven. But why does Asharam want to kill all life in the galaxy? I was not confident before reading this question. Have they said that that's what they want to do? I mean, they want to...
So they say, Eshram says, this ring will be operational.
Okay.
Which makes me think, he wants to fire it. But you're right, it doesn't make a lot of sense if it would just wipe them all out. I don't really know what he would gain from doing that.
Right. What is...
Well, isn't the whole idea is that they have the library on Zeta Halo of all the genetics, like that library, which is cool. I like that revelation.
This is like the floating places with the outlines and stuff?
Yeah. Okay. And even in Halo 1, the idea was, right, like destroy all living life to get rid of the flood and then use that sort of database of genetics to kind of like bring...
Yeah, to reseed the universe.
Back, right?
Yeah.
Yes, to reseed. But real quick, I wanted to shout out... GameSpot has a great 30-minute just rundown of everything that goes back like thousands and millions of years into the Halo lore. I learned all kinds of crazy stuff that there actually is a genesis of where the flood come from. They're
yes. Can we talk about that? I'd love to talk about where the flood came from.
Creatures that fell asleep. They put themselves into cryosleep and turned to dust, and then it
was the precursors, Kyle. The precursors turned into dust. The precursors
from Jak and Daxter.
The precursors said humanity, the Forerunners are unworthy to inherit the mantle of responsibility. Instead, the humans will get it. The Forerunners were pissed and rebelled against the precursors and almost wiped them out. And then the remaining precursors turned into this dust from which they would reconstitute their physical form. After millions of years, the dust got corrupted, and then life that came in contact with it became corrupted and turned into the flood.
Wait.
So there are Forerunners and precursors?
Don't be naive, Jeffem.
Yeah.
Okay, so
and the humanity that's in the game is actually like round 2 of humanity, from what I understand.
Yeah. There were ancient humans that were at war with the Forerunners, and the Forerunners won the war and then sent them back to the Stone Age. But the librarian was the one who wanted to protect the humans, and she was the one who seeded the humans on Earth. And there was humans that lived on Zeta Halo on this ring. So you'll see those ancient like stone circles, those rings.
Yeah.
Those could be left over from the human civilization that was on this ring, 100,000 years ago.
Wait, I want you to have your own History Channel special where you talk about this stuff and how
it's actually really interesting. They had some good, they had a really good author for the Forerunner trilogy of books. There's some cool stuff in there.
Huh. So what's your read on what's happening with Cortana? Like, we saw her talking to Despondent Pyre.
Yes.
What do you think is happening?
She says, you know what, that's the frustrating thing. It's not clear because at the end of Halo 5, her mission was, I'm going to gather all the AIs together to create this army.
Right.
And I'm going to gather anyone else who wants to join. And whoever doesn't, they're going to die or whatever I'm going to do with them. Compose them, kill them, whatever. It's not clear what she's doing on Zeta Halo. Because my read at the end of Halo 5 was that she wanted to fire the Halo rings. That's what I thought she was doing there.
Okay.
Like she likes humming a song and the Halo ring activates. She says to Despondent Pyre, like, I want access to this whole ring. Despondent Pyre says no, like this one specific thing is off limits. And then she says, what's more dangerous than the flood? And then the Infinity arrives and cuts her off. But it's just, that's the thing. It's like, I just want to tell 343, it's okay to let the audience know what the stakes are. You don't have to hide the stakes behind a mystery screen.
Yeah, and who knows? This is the development of all games, I'd imagine, is a lot of reworking the story, and this part's changing over here. And so based on the first half of this game's story, I am doing a lot of overthinking about, like, okay, how much narrative reworking did they do here? And is that part of the reason why this is so confusing? Are they just moving these large chunks around and revelations around, and it's kind of stitched back together? But again, that's just fan development theory for trying to figure out, what was that last year like? Because I don't know if you've had this experience as well, Wade, but like I've read and watched a lot of Joe Staten interviews, and he's a very tight-lipped man about what exactly this last year was like at 343, and it's really frustrating.
Yeah. So I do agree a lot with what you said about how, I guess my problem is you don't need to every single game like come up with a brand new big bad that's out of nowhere. Like, oh, now it's like, it feels like every World of Warcraft sequel. It's like, well, now there's this newer threat that's even bigger than the last one. It's like, well, one of the things I loved about the first 3 Halo games is it was essentially the same villain for all 3 that you had to overcome. And because of that, you learned more about them. The arcs grew and characters changed. If you come up with a new big bad every game, it really makes it, you get burnt out on it a little bit. So that's why I'm really looking forward to maybe they don't do that. Yeah. Maybe we continue with characters over a couple games.
Yeah, it does seem like a lot of that is influenced by the fact that it doesn't seem like people have taken to their vision for Halo at all, where, we have the Didact and Cortana might be bad and people didn't like that. So, okay, well, here's Cortana's even badder. And like, here are the Guardians. And they're like, we definitely don't like that. And so now they're basically latching on to the one thing people liked, which is like, Atriox seems like a pretty cool bad guy. Okay, I guess he's the bad guy now.
It's it's a little bit of the Snoke effect, I believe they call it, of just mad scramble for some big bad,
Which I will say,
they want.
This doesn't feel as bad as Rise of Skywalker yet.
Oh yeah,
so thumbs up so far.
Absolutely. I feel like they're gonna. I feel like the second half of this game's story is going to be better because I do feel like they'll try to answer some questions and at least it'll come into some coherent shape.
Although I will say it would be incredible if a grunt said, he can grapple now. He can grapple now.
No, in multiplayer, if you do grapple or do something in the air, like your AI will say, "Oh, you fly now."
Really, they do? Yes. Oh my god, that's amazing. Somehow, The didact has returned. I don't know. I can't do it anymore.
Sorry, Jeff. I think you were about to say something.
The didact
No. That's fine.
Sorry, can I interject? One quick thing. Right away in the beginning, I don't know if you guys noticed this.
Please.
There's a problem here.
Oh boy.
They have these flashbacks with Halsey in the beginning.
Right.
And she sounds super old. She sounds like an old woman.
Yeah.
The first audio flashback you hear, she's supposed to be 25 years old. It's when she first sees promise in a child candidate. She hopes he survives. She's talking about John.
This is like that weird stuff that the weapon's like, oh, it's just data, like that's dust collecting around, and it's kind of serving as a flashback. So, okay, she's way too old there?
So, well, yeah. I mean, you could make the argument, oh, it's just a weird hallucination of data. Maybe it doesn't have to be accurate. But
right.
And I understand, at this point, you have 3 different versions of Jen Taylor's voice. You want to keep them distinct. So maybe make Halsey old for the whole time and not different ages. But she's supposed to be 25 when she first is working with John 117 when he's 6 years old. Then when in the flashback, when she gives Chief Cortana, she's supposed to be in her late 50s, not in her 70s, like she appears in the flashback. Like she appears in Halo Reach, that age.
I bet it's just going to be a thing of we're going to see her later in this game in some way, and they just want to keep her consistent. Because that would be so confusing for me if it's like, oh no, don't you understand this old character you're seeing now? That was their younger selves earlier. That's just impossible to...
No, and that could be. And they did the same thing in Halo 5 in the opening cutscene. Halsey's like first interacting with Cortana, and she's the same age as she was at the end of the game. So yeah, it was that as well, I'm sure.
All right, very naive question. Again, forgive me. You understand my knowledge based on the deepest dive of Halo Combat Evolved, everybody on the internet. This Halsey lady, the vibe is deranged scientist, but on our side? Or how evil is she on this spectrum for this game? What should be my read on Halsey?
I guess I wouldn't call her evil.
But just, okay, in no way is she evil?
I mean, yeah, okay. Everyone points to the fact that she kidnapped a bunch of 6-year-olds and brainwashed them. It's like, if you buy into that being evil, then you shouldn't feel right even playing as the Master Chief, because he's this brainwashed, like, mercenary killing machine. It's like, well, then Halo's not for you, because that's who you play as.
Right. That's always been Wade's motto, that if kidnapping 6-year-olds is evil, I don't want to be good.
I don't know. It's kind of like when you play Reach and George is the only Spartan who likes Halsey because he's been brainwashed her. It's like, that's how I feel like younger Halo players are. We just like her because she gave birth to the Spartans and birthed the Master Chief.
Okay. So
I guess, but to answer your question though, Hanson, I mean, it's definitely a gray area, like intentionally, right? Like she did something undeniably evil, but it's like, do the ends justify the means is the main question. And like to date in Halo, they kind of have. Right.
Because
that's what Halo 4 tries to point to in the beginning when she says, hey, I protected humanity with my Spartans. And they were like, yeah, but you made the Spartans not to fight the Covenant, but to crush human rebellions. Right. So
she's like, I'm Master Chief though.
Guys, sweet. You like that voice? Here's some good thinking for everybody. Christian Jimenez writes in and says, what do you think of the beginning of the game? Specifically the first... Oh, I'm sorry. Christian, we'll get to your comment later. It's also very smart. But the smart one is Yarf here, saying, I couldn't help but notice the parallel between Sandra Bullock's character in Gravity, when she's curled up floating in space, sleeping, and a tube on her suit is floating near her in such a way to look like an umbilical cord, and Master Chief when he is first found floating in space. His grappling hook also looks like an umbilical cord as it spirals from his body, a cosmic manifestation of his separation from Cortana, his rebirth among the stars, and with it, the rebirth of the Halo franchise.
That's really good. I like that a lot.
That is very smart. What I thought was, oh yeah, they're just showing that he has a grapple hook because that's going to be important.
That's what I thought too.
The new core mechanic.
It's like that scene.
You can't complain if they show it to you in the cutscene.
I think they've done a really awesome job. If you go back and look at that intro of like really driving that grapple hook home. Like in the opening cutscene, you see him using it to grab a gun. Like when you first get gameplay, it's transitioning from a cutscene of him using the grapple hook, then that transitions seamlessly into you actually playing as the grappling hook like launches you. Like they're doing everything they can to be like, use the grappling hook, everybody.
I also we didn't talk about that first mission, but when we watched that cutscene, the first thing I thought is, oh, it's that classic video game thing of showing all the cool stuff in a cutscene, that shows how cool this character is. But then I felt like for once they did a good job following that up when you actually got into the gameplay. And it's like, well, the grapple hook's really cool. And then they had like that whole Call of Duty-esque like escape sequence where everything's falling down and conveniently making a path for you to run through, but you're sliding under doors and everything's exploding. And it's like, no, I'm doing cool stuff too. So
yeah, you can still grapple around and have a good time. Christian Jimenez asks, what do you think about the beginning of the game? Specifically, hang on, before we get to you, Christian, because this is a very smart comment. I promise we'll get to you here. On the grapple hook, we're not done with this in the opening. It was funny because, when Echo gets him in the ship and he's like, his body's all cold or whatever, and you can see the grapple hook. I went back to check the original trailer where it showed that entire sequence, and they didn't have the grapple hook on there because they hadn't revealed the gameplay yet. So they had it removed from that early version of the cutscene, but they had like a bunch of like cables from the ship that also kind of looked like the grappling hook. So I don't know if they were trying to like hint at it in some way or something, but anyways, that's overthinking it. Christian Jimenez has a question. What is Jeffem's mom doing right now? Can she come to the phone?
She's actually watching my son while we do this.
Oh, that's very cute. Somebody in the chat, Backstage Pass watching us live, Mike says, this is our chance to have Jeffem's mom finally play Bloodborne. So,
that is true. I haven't built the prison that she's supposed to be in while she does it, though.
Come on, man. All right. Can we get to Christian Jimenez's comment, Surreal, please?
Please.
No, I want to talk about other things.
What do you think of the beginning of the game, asks Christian, specifically the first two levels? Kotaku claims it's awful to start the game in these linear room after room spaces and shooting galleries. Digital Foundry likes the opening levels, saying it brings the classic Halo feeling before letting you loose in the new open world space. I felt it was fine letting us get our bearings straight by these introductory levels, or should they have just opened the game straight away to the Halo gameplay loop?
I think if they had started with the open world immediate, like a Breath of the Wild style, like kind of like, okay, you have 5 minutes and then like you can go out and do what you want. I feel like that would have been
twinkling piano ready, right?
That's right.
Well, get your fingers going like this and get ready to lower them down on a piano.
So good.
Twinkling Gregorian chant, yeah. But I think if they had started, I think that would have maybe set expectations a little high about what the world is, because like we mentioned earlier, it doesn't feel like that open of like, oh, you can find anything in it, or like there are huge secrets, like there's a hidden boss or something. Like, if they had started off from there, I think it maybe would have set expectations kind of poorly. So the idea of like, okay, you are going to get that classic Halo feel, but then there's also this giant playground for you to explore. I think it works to have those levels be a kind of like start off as like, okay, here's a linear thing. And it makes sense contextually in the world because it's like you're starting off not on Zeta Halo. You have to get there. So it makes sense for you to like not, be exploring space randomly.
Yeah, I think it's a small complaint. We look at the big scope of the game. Like, I was a little bit confused about like that second level. Like, where are you? Where are you getting weapon?
You're in the Pelican base. You don't see. I mean, it says over the intercom you're entering the atmosphere, and then the cargo bay opens, and you're meant to believe that the ship is on autopilot flying to wherever the destination is. But it was kind of confused. Like, it didn't have this big, beautiful establishing shot like silent cartographer of the Pelican lowering down into the cavern like in Halo 1. So it wasn't clear you were going down into the Halo.
Yeah, that just was a little bit odd. So it's like maybe they could have had the one level instead of the two before you get to Zeta Halo. But
well, they're taking a lot. They're going way out of their way to make sure the camera never moves any further from Master Chief than like 10 feet or something like that.
Well,
like
there's a lot of changes in the cinematography in this game, which I did notice right away, because the facial animations didn't seem quite up to par, especially Halo 5's, because Halo 5's cutscenes are these incredible CG movies, whereas these cutscenes are all in engine, except for the first one. That one was CG, and you can notice the big difference in graphical fidelity.
Oh yeah.
And I believe they wanted the cutscenes to be in engine, so there is a very seamless transition from cutscene to gameplay, and there is seamless. It also results in a lot of hilarious moments, like there's the one I saw of the weapon like activating a grav lift and the hunter just flying up off the grav lift. So it's cool, and I appreciate it. I think for me personally, I guess I would prefer a little bit more CG cutscenes, because there's like the fidelity of facial animation and performance is really immersive, and like I think it worked really well in Halo 4, especially for Cortana. So not having that, I guess I kind of lose it. Like with the weapon's face looks good, but it doesn't look as good as Halo 4.
I will always take in-engine cutscenes because it doesn't create a line. Like, it never fades to black, which is a very next gen thing. I feel like it was like PlayStation 4s when they really started to like get good at that of not cutting to black to like switch between gameplay. Like, it's interesting that someone mentioned gravity, like Quaron, because like it feels like a Quaron sort of cinematography where it's like I don't think it's one shot. Right, it's not that God of War, Dead Space 2 level of one shot, but it's really close where it doesn't feel like you ever leave Master Chief, and I really like it. I personally will take that over pre-rendered cutscenes because once you have pre-rendered cutscenes, it definitely makes it feel like, okay, time for cutscene. Yeah. Okay, cutscene over, back to gameplay, and I don't want any break there personally.
Right, or like, this is what I wish the game could look like. Now here's what it actually looks like.
Yes.
I will say. I specifically only lament the face animations. Everything else looks really good. Chief looks amazing in these in-engine cutscenes.
His facial animations, top notch.
in large part, I do agree with Kyle. I really enjoy them. It's just I wish the face had a little bit more fidelity to it.
Yeah, Mario Silva writes in a Patreon with that exact thing, talking about facial animations, and I definitely noticed it too. Like the first time you see it go 216, like, oh, okay, this is the fidelity we're going for. Sure, this is fine. Colin Birch writes in as well and says, this still looks a little rough on their flagship console. Enemies and many other objects won't pop in until certain distances. There is light surface flicker on the side of mountains when turning in certain ways. Not trying to be negative, but did you see the Matrix Unreal demo? If that can be done on the Series X, why is this game struggling? I really do like the game though. I mean, that's tough to compare to an Unreal Tech demo, especially for something that could technically run on a launch
also,
Xbox One.
The word struggle, I think, may be a little harsh.
Yeah.
I mean, to see like some flicker on a mountain, that's different than like, oh my God, the frame rate dropped because I threw too many grenades. I haven't seen anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, well, Jeff, you're playing on a One X, right?
Yeah, and I was surprised how great it looks.
Oh, good.
I obviously haven't seen it on Series X, so I can't say for sure, but it feels like a current gen, like current next gen kind of game. Well, like when I started, I was like, hey, this feels like I'm playing a next gen Halo game.
Welcome to the next generation, Jeff. You finally made it, man. It's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
but no, I mean, that's a good point. And this game does run on the Xbox One X, Xbox One, which is 8-year-old hardware at this point.
Yeah,
it runs at 1080 down to 720 in certain instances and a solid 30 frames per second. But I think that's really impressive considering how this game looks. There are a couple interesting things that I learned on a Digital Foundry video about this, how it's implementing shadow maps that are cheaper to render, but also less visible in the distance. So as a result, trees and other smaller landscape objects appear to have little to no shadow. By comparison, Red Dead Redemption 2 pre-calculates the large scale ambient occlusion and adds detail and nuance to the landscape. So there's a lot of little tricks that make the distance look more believable that I don't think they're quite doing. It could be the slip space engine or other tricks they're implementing to make it run on last gen hardware. But overall, I'm not bothered by it because this is the best a Halo game has ever looked. And I guess I love it for what it is, and the little quirks don't bother me. So
yeah. Louis K writes in and says, the game looks phenomenal, especially the cutscenes. There's such a focus now on Chief's helmet and visor in particular, where it's showing the reflection of who he's talking to. Most notably so far with weapon and the installation after the Cortana flashback and during Spartan Griffin's death scene. Yeah, that is a smart way of showing his visor, but still having a little more pizzazz in there. Real killer question from Rory Sublet. Would it be Halo without tracking the lights in the intro? I love the low budget follow the flashlight version this time around. It really speaks to the desperate situation Chief finds himself in. Do you think, I mean, is that fun. Still practically them learning whether or not you're playing inverted? Or like, console-wide, they know at this point, right? Is this just nostalgia's sake for nostalgia's sake?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It's got to be.
All right.
They even have, like when in that moment, your head moves a little more slowly than it normally would in that instance, which to me says this is a cinematic moment. Like, you're here to feel immersed.
Right.
Which, on that note, I loved when you got the moment of, like, insert chip. You have to do it.
Press X to insert chip.
Like, they could easily just, like, put it in like they do a million times, but you're the one doing it. I mean, it just doubles down on the idea that you want to feel like the Master Chief in this game, and obviously they want that for every game, but I just really like that little touch. It's like, hey, you are this person.
Do you trust weapon? I feel like that little moment of, like, you have to press the button to actually insert her into your head, And then there's that moment, it's right at the end of the stopping point here, where she has a line where she's like, why don't you trust me? Or something real quick where it's like, okay.
Yeah. That line, I wrote that line down because, like, a lot of the dialogue is kind of like, has a lot of jargon in it, and I don't really pay like super close attention to it. But that line and particularly that line reading, like, stuck out to me. Like, I really felt like the weapon was like, what the hell, man? Like, I'm here helping you. Like, what else do you want from me? And it hit me. Right. And there's some line too where she says, like, it's when you're on top of the spire, and it's something in paraphrasing, but it's like, oh, wouldn't it be cool to rebuild the Zawarhello? Like, it looks so beautiful. And it's like, no, that's evil. And she's like, oh, right, the Banished, that's right. I keep forgetting they exist. I just learned about them and all that stuff. Where it's like, okay.
I mean, I think the part where she was supposed to be deleted and tells you she isn't yet, right? I think that's kind of, but I think that line specifically, I read it as like, well, Master Chief knows it's not Cortana in there, so he's hesitant to replace her with someone who is supposed to literally replace Cortana because they look identical, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So he's kind of like, if I put you in there, I'm basically acknowledging that, like I'm moving on from Cortana in a sense. But it could also be the thing where it's like, I don't know if I trust this new lady.
Which is really cool that her name is the weapon, so it even further creates this distance. It's like, you're not even a named thing. I'm going to be a little more distant from you.
I mean,
and it makes sense in that sense because, like, oh, the last time we had a very close relationship, it ended poorly. Yeah. So it's like both the UNSC and Master Chief are creating that distance of like, this time I'm going to keep you at arm's length because your name is literally like the tool, the weapon. Like, don't get personally attached to this one this time.
Yeah.
I mean, is it too simple and stupid of a connection? The idea that she might be some manifestation of Zawarhello, because that is also a weapon.
I mean, it could be. Like, is that where do you find her on Zawarhello?
That's what we're talking about. I don't really know where that was. Where you picked her up. I don't know.
Oh yeah. That was in the Halo.
That was inside the Halo.
Her up. Okay. Yeah, because that was in the middle of the library of the Silixes. Right. The seed beans or whatever. Those are called Silixes.
Thank you.
God Is the idea you gave her Cortana to delete and then like left her at Zawarhello as like putting a hard drive in a box and not connecting it to anything because there's a virus on it? Was that kind of the idea? And it's dangerous to take her back because Cortana's swimming around in there somewhere?
I don't know if she has any connection currently to Cortana. I believe it's set up as that she locked Cortana down, and she confirmed she did that. She locked Cortana down.
Yeah, she says. And now, quote my.
And now Cortana isn't here anymore, so my job's done.
But I'm still alive. Yeah, she says.
Still alive.
She says, quote, my instructions were to enter this installation, imitate Cortana, and lock her down for retrieval. That's what she says.
Yeah.
Okay.
Confusing.
So she's Cortana. That's the big twist. She's going to remove her clothes.
She's going to remove her mask.
And dumb. Yeah.
Spencer Botine echoes what you're saying, Wade, and says, I initially thought Halo Infinite's marketing beat, Become the Master Chief, was pretty lame. But after playing the first several hours, I totally get it.
I am the Master Chief now.
Now he has become the Master Chief. Colton Westbrooks writes in and says, I really enjoyed the conservatory level. I thought it had good tension and a good vibe. The design of the Forerunner architecture in this level in particular is so spot on to the original Halo, and it made me feel so happy to see it. Shout out to the inclusion of the lit up arrows on the floor to tell you what direction to take. That little detail brought it all together.
Yeah, I mean, they've done that before. They've literally had arrows on the ground telling you where to go before.
Right.
That level specifically, because that actually brings to mind, I feel like this is the first Halo game that has had like very explicit boss fights, like with enemies that have health bars. Because like the closest you got,
there's one at the end of 2, right? But it's I don't think the character has a
that's more
bar.
of a set like the against the scare. Oh yeah, I know who you mean, right? Like
Tartarus.
Yeah,
he's like the one exception. Everything else, it's like here's a giant scarab, which is more of a set piece, or like here's 2 hunters, which is like the classic. Like that feels like a mini boss encounter, not necessarily like a boss encounter. But this one, it's like you have to fight I forget the name of the machine in the conservatory, but like he has like weak points that you have to hit to like activate his damage phase, and then you have to hit him and like reduce like that felt like a pretty big departure. I don't know if it felt that way to you guys, because I felt like that was one of the things that had defined Halo is like they don't really have bosses most of the time.
No, it was great.
It, though.
Yeah, same with Kyle. It was a lot of fun. I've never been one of those people who dislike boss fights in Halo. I think it can work if done well, and because one of the whole points of this game is that they want to make the sandbox really fun, and you can experiment with different things. You can grapple hook the fuel rod canister and chuck it, or do any number of things. Especially the boss fights are much more fun than they usually are in Halo because of the grappling hook. You can just like shoot around the room and escape, whatever's coming your way.
Yeah, to me, like the grappling hook specifically feels like, for as much as people were like, oh, this isn't Halo in Halo 4 and 5, the grappling hook feels like it transforms combat in Halo more than anything else that they've introduced like since the original Halo. Because you can use it in so many ways to like shortcut a lot of the stuff that people think is foundational to like the way Halo combat works. Because like the enemies with shields, like you can just grapple them and it won't do anything, but it'll like make them real. Yes. So you don't even have to aim properly to actually take out those guys. You can like grapple to vehicles to immediately like rodeo them and then like take them over in a way that makes it a lot simpler. And it, like you mentioned the Mangler early on, like that's been the weapon for me because like close quarters combat has never been easier to get into,
right? Because
you can just grapple to everything and stun them. So it just feels like I'm taking all these shortcuts in Halo combat, which to me, if I were more like, if I was like one of those people who was super precious about like, oh, the Halo formula has to be this thing, I would almost be madder at it. But because like, for one, it feels really good. And two, like, I'm not necessarily someone who's like, well, Halo has to be this, that I'm enjoying this a lot. Like I'm enjoying that flow, but it just feels like this almost further highlights like that a lot of the people didn't want Halo to stay the same. They just wanted it to be improved, and I think a lot of the stuff they did in 4 and 5 didn't necessarily hit with people, whereas this feels so transformational to the way Halo works, but it works, so people are really latching onto it.
Yeah, it's known as 30 seconds of even more fun.
I just have to jump back, Hanson, to that comment though about the Forerunner level.
Yeah,
it is so I can't describe how happy it made me feel to see Forerunner architecture back to where it was traditionally, how it looks.
Oh, okay.
The designs are exactly what they were from the original trilogy, but they are improved upon. And I didn't really care for Halo 4 and 5's Forerunner architecture. It seemed overly just complicated just for complicated's sake. It didn't seem to fit their design language from the earlier games, which was simple, elegant, with these relatively simple geometric shapes with intricate surface detail. And that's exactly what we have here.
Yeah.
Designs are the same as the original trilogy. And the interiors feel like these incredible like temples you're in. They're extraordinary.
Yeah, it was like a better version of the library, basically, is what conservatories.
I was going to say the thing that I appreciated is that you don't go into the same room 10 times and then like lose which way you're going and start backtracking because they all look the same. Like they have done a good job of, I just enjoy playing a Halo game where I'm not seeing repeat areas that I'm doing combat in. Like every place I've gone has felt new, even in the open world, even though it's all, kind of the same biome that you're in, which I've seen people have been complaining about. Like all the areas in all the skirmishes in combat that I've gotten into has felt unique to every other place that I've gone, which has not always been the case with Halo.
Yeah, and even in the Pacific Northwest biome, the kind of default Halo biome, like there's been areas where it's kind of like, okay, this is like kind of deforested and stuff, just in the stuff we've seen where they're kind of light touches. But yeah, based on the internet comments, I don't think we're exactly getting to like a snow area or anything like that. That was even
It also wouldn't make like, why would they feel the need to put like a lava pit in the Halo? Like it just doesn't make any sense for there to like. You would think about like any like artificially built installation that they would just have like one here's the perfect living space,
right?
And we're just going to repeat that ad infinitum. Like it makes sense for it to be like one biome without like here's where it always rains for some reason.
Well, I haven't seen the movie Biodome in a while, but I think there was a lava pit in Biodome that they all had to dodge. Matthew Woksha writes in and kind of mirrors what you were saying earlier, Surreal. He says, unlike previous games, in this one, I never run out of ammo for the gun I'm using. I think the reason may be a combo of all the ammo crates, racks lying around, and the grapple shot making long-range melee a viable and deadly option. Just talking about how it's completely changing up the combat. Is like, yeah, I've been doing that so much. That's my default move, probably to the point that I'm not as creative as I should be, is just grapple so they're stunned, come over, melee them once, and then just switch to a shotgun or something. And so just changing up that flow means that I'm using half the ammo I normally would.
Yeah, typically with Halo games, you would have to ditch your guns pretty quickly. And I get that encouraged experimentation and trying all the weapons, but this found a much better balance for me where I could be at my FOB, take whatever guns I wanted out of the thing. It's like, all right, I want an assault rifle and a pistol for this one. And you'll run out of ammo eventually, but it's like, yeah, I know the carbine, I know the mangler, I know the ravager. It's like, I want these guns for this mission, and then I'll switch. And it's just like, yeah, it's like, use what guns you want, and eventually you'll run out, and then you'll have to grab whatever, but it elongates how long you can use weapons a little bit more, which I appreciate.
Yeah. Ben Shively writes in and asks, which guns have you been finding yourself using the most? With the vast array of weapons to choose from, I almost never swap out of my battle rifle, assault rifle. They throw a lot of guns at you in the beginning of this game, and I am that totally boring person. I'm just like, I kind of like the assault rifle and the pistol. Like, it feels like Halo to me, even though there's all this wacky stuff. I want to stick to this.
Well, I said earlier, the Mangler has really surprised me. I really like that weapon a lot. Yeah.
It is cool. Yeah, that's kind of the Magnum, I guess, would be the best comparison. Yeah, I think my favorite might be the Hydra, which you get from one of the early bosses. It's kind of the reddish one that has like the little lock-on window.
Yeah, I wrote that down. I wrote that his name was Tetramonius, but I don't think that's right. But yeah, right. I have been carrying around. I assume you can find that gun other places, but I've been afraid to like lose it. And never come against a. So that has always been my second gun, and then I trade off something that has more bullets as my second gun. But yeah, that one is super powerful and just feels good to use. So I always keep it, and they throw in enough variety with the ammo crates that I can replenish it enough to justify having that be one of my two guns for the entire game so far.
Yeah. This Halo makes me laugh because so much of it is about Chief being the ultimate badass, like this legendary soldier. But I still love this badass. Every time he's holding the plasma pistol, it's like, oh, his hand's all shaky. And then after he shoots it every time, he's like, ow, ow, ow. Just like keep those animations, but it's so silly. EJ Crow says he's about to eat some crow, right, Serial?
Yes.
Yeah, he says I'm not feeling the new shotgun.
It is very different. It's not. It's clearly not the same iteration. You can't get in and one shot anything at close range. It's more of a medium range 3-shot kill, like the Mangler. I'd say it's closer to that than what it normally is.
Yeah, Wesley Minner. MinnMaxer now, you're legally renamed, says, I find it funny that Master Chief can chuck the explodey canister thing 27 times farther than a tiny grenade. Yeah, I thought that was going to be the most common comment going in, honestly, was just the explodey canister things, because they are everywhere. It's absurd, but they're fun.
Yeah, you just aim for those. I don't even shoot enemies. I wasn't until late. Like, it was like the last boss here that I started grabbing canisters with the grapple shot.
What? Really?
I would throw them. Oh, yeah. I just wasn't really. For some reason, I thought they would explode if I like grapple shot them, so wasn't messing with them. But yeah, but at the last second, I was like, oh my god, it's like MacGruber figuring out how to use a gun at the end of the movie, where I'm like, why haven't I been doing this the whole time?
That is insane. The fact that they would just throw so many on the screen and with this big new mechanic and not connect those two.
I mean, I shot them. I shot the hell out of them. I blew them up. I just didn't grab them with the grapple shot.
Oh,
what's cool is like the different colors signify what their purpose is. You have the EMP ones, the blue ones, and the ones that have the same effect as the heat wave, which has like the ricochet, plasma. So that's kind of neat.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jeff, I'm gonna cut you off.
For like the first two levels, like they take a long time to introduce you getting grenades, and I was going through them like, when are they just going to give me some grenades to start throwing at people? And then I realized, oh no, the canisters are the grenades, and they're everywhere.
Right. Hey, this is a very specific comment, but that's what the deepest dive is all about. Am I right? Needler is a kinetic ammo? I thought that'd be like a plasma thing, but it was reloading based on the kinetic thing, I believe.
I think it's based on how the ammo works. So if you have to like if it has a heat sink and a percentage, then that's plasma.
Okay.
But since you're loading the needles into the thing, you have a limited number of needles, I guess.
I guess that makes sense. No heat sink. Yeah, one needle at a time.
Well, I mean, the real answer for you, Hanson, is that the Needler still sucks, and you should never pick it up.
I love the Needler, man.
But it's interesting that that's the question, because I think the disconnect is like, you think kinetic is human, and plasma is alien.
Totally. Totally.
And they're very distinct, but it crosses that line.
Not the case.
I feel like the needle was actually super effective against the boss with the hammer. Like that felt like the explosion from the needler was like like I was using the mangler and the battle rifle against that guy, and it was just taking forever. And then I died a couple times, and though I just randomly picked up a needler and like it melted that dude. Like just like if you got the explosion off on him, it was like half his health basically, and it almost made me think like, am I supposed to be like thinking about enemy weaknesses or something? Like, is there, because I know plasma and weapons are are strong against shields, but I was wondering if there was anything like any sort of elemental based system of like the red weapons are strong against this or whatever.
I don't know.
And hard light, whatever that is. It's always just, I have run out of ammo for one gun and now I'm picking this thing up and I hope I do well.
I think hard light.
The needler honestly functions like a confetti popper for me, because I think the animation of it, like the needles ejecting from the gun, looks great. Like it looks very cool. It looks cooler than it ever has. But I'm just so bad with it. I've always been so bad with the needler that it's like, I'll fire it off to be like, wow, that's really pretty. All right, now I'll go pick up a real gun.
I think hard light is just the sentinel beam, unless I'm missing something else. Because the hard light is
the Dead Space gun, right? Where you can do horizontal or vertical shots that uses hard light, right?
Oh, you're okay. The heat wave.
Which is funny, now that I think about it, that it is like the Dead Space gun in that you can change whether it's vertical or horizontal. And I used it on that final boss where you're effectively trying to shoot his limbs.
Right.
So that was like, that was a very Dead Space boss fight.
Which we just had the deepest dive on. It's all perfect. It's I was really intimidated by the charge and chucks in this game. Those guys that just run at you because they're faster than you are. Until I remembered, oh yeah, the grapple hook. It's the solution for everything. Because like just having that ability to like stun them as I'm launching over to them for the melee can really change it. Or just turn around and then I can just Spider-Man my way out of there, and then I don't have to worry about them being slightly faster than me or whatever.
Yeah, I've been surprised by how they aren't afraid to make some of those skirmishes really difficult. Like I think the first one is you get onto the bridge of the ship, maybe it's the second level, first or second level, where it's like I died several times. I'm playing on normal, and up to that I was like, no, I should just switch to heroic because this is too easy. And then it was like you got the guys with the big horned helmets and they shoot the mortars down on you, and it's like, holy crap, these guys are kicking my buns.
For me, it was like I thought everything was super easy up until I got to the Zeta Halo, and then I ran into a couple situations where it's like, oh, I'm suddenly dying a lot. Maybe it comes down to open world strategizing that I'm just not great at.
And that almost feels like a deliberate choice of like when you first go out into the open world and there's like 50 guys in that first area, like, and you really have to start scrambling. Like that's when it gets super fun, and it feels like old Halo but in a new, more interesting way.
Right.
Yeah. One thing that I actually learned recently is apparently this is like the first Halo game that was balanced around normal. So it's actually normal in this game is actually harder than it's been in the past.
Oh,
so like
okay.
all the other difficulties are a little bit tuned differently this time around. So I've actually been playing on normal and feel like it's like there are encounters where I totally have felt like I was getting away with cheating by just playing on normal. But like there have been like the guy with the hammer. Like there have been some pretty tough encounters so far, which so I'm pretty good with like the level of challenge so far.
Yeah, there have been a few where I was like, oh, this would be super annoying if I had been on heroic, especially trying to play in a strict time limit of like, I would have died. I would have died too many times on this.
I think a lot of it is also colored by the fact that I like in the past year I've played through all the Halo games, and like I was someone who used to as a kid would just like, okay, I'm playing Halo 3 for the first time, legendary. Like I always play on the max difficulty because I'm that kind of guy, and like it was just like hours and hours of like hiding behind crates and stuff, peeking out from barrels, and so like going back and playing through them on normal, like it just felt so like I almost feel like I'm hacking this game by like just blowing through it, but now like it being a little more difficult is.
I like the idea, Serial. Like, I'm gonna play Halo and I'm gonna turn down the fun knob.
Hell yeah.
But I'm also doing this because like one of the reasons is that they're adding campaign co-op later. It's not available now, but like already like people like my friend group has gotten back into Halo after having not played basically since 3, and they're all like, so I mean at one point they're gonna add co-op, right? So we should all just do a 4-person legendary run. And I was like, yeah, I guess I'm like committing to that now.
Hell yeah.
So like I'm okay with like not playing it on heroic for the first time through.
It's gonna be so silly when you get co-op in this game. Like it is going to be just grab ass town in there, and I can't wait to see it.
Sorry, what?
I in a good way, I think. I think the first spot in this game that really kicked my ass was that optional boss, like the sword guy. That is optional, right? Of just like, okay, it's kind of like that nook way down here in the lower left.
The ones that you have to assassinate or like kind of hunt down.
Right. But that first sword guy, I really had a tough time with him. But then I love that idea of like, okay, beat him, then you just get the sword whenever you want it. It's such a sweet, real tangible benefit for actually going out of your way taking that guy out. So was that the guy that was in the beginning when Escharum was talking to his bro, and then he's like, sword guy, go follow that guy. Okay, that was a different sword blade master guy.
Sword guy.
Okay.
Well, it's funny because like
I'm more than my sword.
He has the regular red energy sword and then the other like shorter one. They're both like dark red.
Gotcha.
Okay, because that scene was funny because like that's the first elite that you see in that cutscene.
Right.
And then when you jump into gameplay, you see an elite right away, and that's the first elite you encounter in gameplay. So it felt very much to me just like the cutscene was like, all right, super assassin, go get Master Chief, and then it felt like I killed him in 2 seconds in the very first instance that I had gameplay, and I was like, I don't think that was him, but it felt like it was.
Going back to the assassination missions, like I've been surprised. I have been burnt out on open world games for I feel like years at this point, but I've been surprised that all of the side mission and missions that you're doing feel like such boilerplate open world stuff, and yet they're all so much more fun than I have had in an open world game for so long. I think it just comes down to it's those very familiar missions, but it's Halo combat, and it has been hard to. I've been towards the end of our run. I was like, okay, I got to stick to the main missions if I'm going to get through this in time. But it's like, but man, that assassination one is like just a little bit over that way. Like I can hit that on my way to the next one. I have wanted to do every little side mission that they've put in there because even though it just boils down to like, well, an FOB is a bandit camp, and an assassination mission is an assassination mission, which is the same in every game. But they feel a little more, like hand designed, I guess you would say, just because of the combat. And
I feel like they do a pretty good job of balance of like making an open world that I think by other measures would like this is really simplistic and there's not a whole lot to it, but it's all built around that combat loop that is like so rewarding and well made that like like all of those are to the me like. All of those like open world stuff is you're getting upgrades and stuff, but they all serve the purpose of like, let's get you into this encounter that we've very finely tuned around Halo's combat. So it's like the whole point is like, the fact that I'm getting Valor, like I don't even know what Valor does, but it's like I got Valor from completing this encounter. That was like the reason I'm going into this encounters is because I know I'm going to have fun with them, not because like, oh well, that's going to get me like 500 whatever, and so I need 500 to upgrade my thing. So it's like they do a really good job of making just it intrinsically fun to do everything on the map versus like, I'll get all the resources. I'm trying to mine this map for resources effectively by going around and doing everything.
Yeah, I was shocked that I was having fun doing those because I hate that in other open world games where it's like, oh, this on the map, this on the map, this on the map. And I just made myself to the first one, and then I was like, oh, okay, and then
I think it's the number. I think it's the fact that there's like 5 to 6 things here compared to even something like Forza Horizon 5 where it's, hey, look at this map. It's littered with things to do. At a certain point, it just becomes a checklist if there's too many. But if you're playing Assassin's Creed and there's 4 things to do, I bet you'd enjoy it a lot more.
Yeah, and it's like the because they're simplified, like the numbers are all reduced. It's not like, oh, I'm getting 500 upgrade crystals. It's like the Valor is maybe the only thing I don't really know what it does. But like everything else is like you're getting upgrade points, which is like one thing is like very translatable into like one perk, or you're getting a cosmetic for multiplayer, or you're like the assassination missions give you a specific like modified version of a gun. But it's also just like I enjoy the combat in this game enough that I'm willing to do it for its own sake versus a lot of other games that I burn out at because like the loop isn't fun enough to do for 50 hours, but they give you 50 hours of stuff to do.
Yeah.
So then you end up being like, I'm just going to either not do them or I get bored of it and stop.
Yeah. I care so much more about the upgrades in this game in general than I did like Metroid Dread. Like getting every new piece of equipment. It's like, ooh, okay. Even like the little boost here, like Real DL watching this live. He's like, I love how they introduced the dodge ability, but I'm like, why would I ever use this over the grapple hook? That's the kind of thing. Is I'm excited about all this equipment, and then I'm just like, I feel naked unless I have the grapple hook ready to go for my piece of equipment. It feels terrible without it.
I don't even like sprint that much. Because I'm always grappling the ground so I can jump. Like because I feel like it's faster to just do that.
Right?
Yeah. I feel like they should just map the other equipment to sprint so I use them more.
Right.
Yeah. It's like grappling hook is default, but then there's a couple instances. It's like, oh, I need to snipe these guys. I'll put up the shield. Oh, I need to see this invisible dude. I'll use the threat detector, or a hunter. Maybe I'll use the juke to get out of the way. A couple things, but
it's like the grappling hook is like always on, right? Like, and unless I'm fighting like the hunters or someone with a Gatling gun, then Also.
And Cyril, the Valor unlocks things at your FOBs.
Oh, okay.
So some more vehicles and weapons and
give
stuff.
you vehicles, weapons, and Marines that you can use.
Is there a chart somewhere for if you
if you hit select on the controller?
Sure.
So when you go into your upgrade sub menu and you go to FOB, it'll show you the unlockable things and where you are.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah,
it's like a battle pass but fun.
Oh, that sounds fun. Yeah, at a certain point, I think I'm done with the cosmetic stuff for multiplayer. I just don't care about cosmetics. So it's like that's the one thing on the map. I'm like, okay, I can go ahead and skip those. But the other stuff, I definitely want to keep exploring. D's Butts writes in, former Trivia Tower champion, and says, I find the unpredictable checkpoint system is keeping me from experimenting as much as I'd like. Anyone else had some strange respawns after trying a particular combat encounter multiple times?
There have been a few, yeah.
I did get instantly run over by a ghost once after spawning back in. Which it's like, oh, that's fun.
That's beautiful. Yeah, it's either surprisingly generous with the checkpoint, or if at a couple instances of like, really? I'm all the way back here? Okay, sure. But nothing too alarming, I don't think.
I got stuck in this loop where I was going around with this Marine that I had formed a makeshift bond with, and I accidentally drove us over a cliff. And died, and then respawned as we're falling, and every time I watched them die again and again, and they kept going like, yeehaw!
That's how I want to go out, man.
Well, I mean, yeah, the Xbox didn't have as many exclusives, so they added a death loop in there. So.
Smart. Yes. That's the Cyril we know and love. He's still got it. He's still got his fastball. I don't care what everyone else is saying. He's still with us.
He's lost it. I haven't heard him in a while. He hasn't said a thing.
Jedi James 2 says, so does Master Chief not realize there's no fall damage in this game? After the monitor boss fight, he makes a point of calling the pilot for an extraction, then skydives into the Pelican. Just prior to the mission, I'd climbed the highest nearby mountain and jumped off just because how cool is that? So the extraction moment at the end of this mission really made me do a double take. Still an awesome campaign, though.
Yeah, which I have to say, because this is the deepest dive, I timed how long it takes to jump off the top spire. It's 10 seconds.
For that fall?
In that cutscene, it's 20 seconds. Oh, so
wow.
And I know people are going to say, well, he's doing this, so he falls slower. He weighs like 1,000 pounds.
So that's not going to be a factor.
Speaking of which, did you guys get the achievement for reaching the highest point in the game?
I went to that mountain. I don't pay attention to achievements.
You have to get higher than you think to for the game to recognize it. Yeah, I'm surprised by how specific I had to get to the top of it.
So it's that mountain, right? That I kind of Skyrim my way up.
Yeah, it's in the middle of the map, and it's like very obvious that it's the highest point in the game, but it's like you have to get a little higher than you think to get up there.
Interesting. Colin White writes in over on Patreon and says, I don't know how I feel about the look of the new Phantom dropship redesign, but I absolutely love that they added an ominous horn whenever they're within sight of you. Yes. It reminds me of the tripods from Spielberg's War of the Worlds and gives me time to duck and cover. They're absolutely shredding me on heroic.
It reminds me of BioShock Infinite when those ships would fly in.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, no, I wrote that down because they're awkward and clunky. You can see like the spline animation of it going like, like, you know what I mean? Like you can see the line it's following, the track, the invisible track that it's animating on, which is confusing because Phantoms have been fine forever. Like you can see it in like Halo 3. I mean, they're banking, they look like aircraft, and all of a sudden it looks like a Walt Disney ride that's about to break down. And when you blow them up, it's not as satisfying because they just kind of go bloop. I don't know if you guys have run into that yet, but
yeah, I've noticed it, but I appreciate that you did. Jeffem, do you like this game?
Yes. Do I like what?
Do you like this game?
I have been enjoying it very much. Yes, I was, and it didn't take long for me to realize like, oh, I probably should have been more excited about this, or at least had the inkling that I was going to have a lot of fun playing this.
That is exactly,
especially since we just played through the original one, and I enjoyed that, and that game hasn't aged as well as it could have.
Yeah, in some areas, yeah. Do you think, Jeffem, there's a chance that Halo Infinite will be your game of the year?
I will not rule it out.
Really? Because this is what I do, Jeffem, is I stay awake at night and I just think about what your top 10 list is going to look like. I have no idea.
I do too, my friend. It has been a weird year for playing games, and there have been a lot that I feel like I haven't even played enough to put on a top 10 list.
Right.
Like if I'm being honest with myself.
Of course.
And so, but when I've been playing this one, it's like, It has felt almost like a relief of like, oh no, I'm playing one of the best games of the year right now, and I'm pot committed to finishing it. So
hell yeah,
we'll see where it lands.
It's the same feeling you could have had if you would have played Metroid Dread by now.
You know,
yeah,
Hanson, I don't come on to these shows for this kind of abuse.
Just saying, man, like, you know, we got a Christmas break, 2 weeks coming up before we have to lock down our top 10s. That's some good Christmas Metroid time. Sit by that tree, chug, what's that drink? Eggnog.
Like Kyle with a Yule log?
Yeah, like Kyle with a Yule log, that Wade filmed, yeah. All right.
When I think of Christmas, I think Dread.
With these in-laws. Hey,
wait, did we ever reveal what I was playing in that Yule log video?
Oh, I don't think we did.
Is that like a long-held secret?
Was it? I forgot what it was. Was it Shadow of the Colossus? What was it?
Well, now the question is, do we reveal it here on the deepest dive?
No one knows.
I honestly don't remember what it was.
Was The Last Guardian.
That's right.
There it is, everybody.
Okay, moving on.
Earth-shattering revelation.
If anybody wants to jump back and answer that one YouTube question comment from 4 years ago.
Did anyone buy that NFT style in Extra Life?
No, they didn't. Yeah, we people, for charity, they could reserve one. Mick Manga writes in and says, this is my first Halo game. Congratulations. And one thing that really stands out above all else is the music. It's catchy, and I find myself already humming a few different tunes when I'm not playing it. Yeah, it's fantastic. And Stephen Woodson writes in and says, the soundtrack is great, but I wanted to highlight one song that oddly isn't on the soundtrack. When you're at an FOB, a marching snare plays followed by some light piano chords before breaking into staccato piano notes. This hit right when I started exploring the open world for the first time, and I couldn't help but be reminded of Breath of the Wild. There's your twinkling piano, Kyle. I'm sorry, did I say Breath of the Wild? I meant Sonic Frontiers twinkling piano. Yeah, I think the music freaking rules in this game.
Yeah, and it's like... Good. Like I enjoyed Halo 4 soundtrack, but it definitely felt very off in its own direction. Halo 5, they really tried to do a lot of nostalgia. I mean, I did a whole piece at Game Informer about the music, about how they were like, we went to the Abbey Road and like to this grand church and had a Gregorian chant of, you know, they were trying to go over the top with their production of the music. And it just, and it's like they were trying to check things off the list to make an impressive soundtrack. With this, it actually really hits me. I mean, it's like, along with the idea that they are going back to the original Forerunner design, but enhancing it. It's like this design philosophy of enhancing what can be enhanced, but not changing for the sake of change.
Yeah.
This music has similar classic Halo motifs, but expands upon it in this way that gives so much just wonder to the ambience of going around the ring. You'll be in a high up place and it'll be just silent and you'll hear the wind and the grass blowing. All of a sudden you'll look at the sunset on the ring and the music will slowly pick up. I mean, we've talked about Breath of the Wild a lot, but it does make me feel similar to that.
Right.
Just because the way the music perfectly adds to the mood of what's happening. So also one of the composers did the music for the Ori games.
Yeah, Gareth
which
Coker.
I think kind of ties into the tone.
Yeah,
really
it's
nice.
excellent. And like, it goes without saying that the original Halo soundtrack is fantastic, and it's stunning that still in 2021, every time they flirt with that original music again, just in a callback, it's like, God, this still works so well. Even just like those little shots of like Master Chief getting in the back of the Pelican, just all I have to do is just lay a little dun 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 dun. It's like my heart rate doubles. It's just amazing how effective that stuff is after all these years. Then I have to see a doctor. But yeah, there's one section in this game that we haven't talked about yet where it's like the kind of red spooky hallway section with the flashlight. It's like where you have to turn your flashlight on for the first time, just kind of red lights and stuff. But the music really stood out there as being especially grabbing. Clemens Zobel writes in and says, I'm seeing lots of animals on this Halo, which helps breathe some life into the environment. There was a little bird thing on the ground that started to take off when I approached, and to my horror, I was able to shoot it, and it poofed out of existence. That's right. Didn't you taste what that bird tasted like, Suriel, thanks to your Pringles can or whatever the hell that was?
That's right. I think those were for Reach, though. Those were indigenous to Reach. So
okay.
I ate powder off of an extinct bird.
That's right.
Sure that powder wasn't the flood?
What was it called?
Dun, dun.
No.
What's that?
What was the animal called?
Tentacles.
I don't remember.
Moa.
Yeah, the Moa.
Oh, yeah.
Andrew Vala writes in and says, Halo Infinite rocks! And by rocks, I'm referring to that jaw-dropping terrain texture. Game mountain and rock formation textures usually bug me with how bland, repetitive, and unnatural they look, especially in open world games, but holy Halo! Andrew Wallace right near the comedy bit. I'm looking at a mountain and the rock formations, strata, what have you, look completely different than the mountain next to it. Very good call. That is true. I guess I haven't noticed.
You spend a lot of time aiming for it, right, with your grapple shot, so
right.
You better make it look nice.
You gotta.
Which is so cool considering that you're surrounded by artificial landmass around you, those hexagonal plates or pillars that make up the foundation that you're on. They could have easily gone with just a boring landscape given that it's artificial, but they made it look incredibly realistic, which is really nice, contrast between the two.
Yeah. Muffin Crumbs writes in and says, I love how there's a day-night cycle to the world. It really helps make the world feel alive and like time is actually going by. It also helps to make the base encounters feel different, and the sunsets are beautiful. And then D's Butts replies by saying, I love reading exchanges over on Patreon. D's Butts replies by saying, how does day-night even work on a ring-shaped object anyway? Is night way shorter? And then Mitch replied and says, as far as I can tell, yes, night is just shorter thanks to a ring-based planet. It's fun stuff.
Is it just the other side of the ring going in front of
it? Could be. It's
sun?
A ring eclipse, maybe. Yeah, unclear.
Well, no, it is spinning a bit too, I believe. Because what you can do is, anytime of day, you can look up and see the opposite above you. You can see night above you or day above you.
Interesting. I haven't studied it that closely yet, but that's awesome. Here's an interesting one. Chris H writes in and says, what was the last thing Suriel ate?
What was the last thing I ate?
Yeah.
An omelet, I think.
An omelet for dinner. The Suriel Vasquez story. No, Chris H didn't write in about that. He says, hey, cohorts, as I play the early levels of Infinite, it really strikes me as a sort of remake of Halo 1, akin to something like Force Awakens. Can we count this as kind of in the Lega sequel mold of Hollywood these days?
I guess in the sense that it really enhances the second level of Halo, but I agree. It makes the second level of Halo it's like that more expansive, but there's Halo 1 had a jungle, like swamp. It had a wintry area. So, I know a lot of people say that. It doesn't really feel like a reboot to me. It just feels like an expansion of the universe. I mean, obviously there's a lot of back to basics with it, but I don't know. It's its own thing, and it's really hitting all the marks for me.
Saying it's its own thing, I think, is a little bit strong. It definitely feels like, they're gunning for that Halo 1 nostalgia in a big way.
It's like, it feels more like they're trying to do traditional Halo stuff, and they're looking at, I think when they looked at the one biome they have in this game, they looked at that level specifically.
Yes. Yeah.
But there's a lot of other stuff in Halo 1 that this game doesn't really touch, like a lot of the library stuff and a lot of like the horror and terror of like the flood and stuff. Like, so it doesn't really touch on it. It's not like it's trying to hit every part of it, like beat for beat, the way The Force Awakens feels like a remake of A New Hope.
Yeah.
But it does feel like it is inspired by like what people have come to imagine as like, this is traditional Halo.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I totally agree, Serial. Yeah, that's right.
Tom Blackburn, I've been playing this entirely through xCloud with a Razer Kishi because it refuses to launch on PC. Oh, that's fun. Surprisingly, the input lag is low enough that I can still pull off some acrobatic nonsense with the grapple hook. Anybody else playing with xCloud? Tom wants to know. No.
I'm playing on his Razer Kishi actually when he's sleeping.
Sent the Prophet. Is this campaign so far enough to compete with PlayStation exclusives? Is it on par with Horizon, Last of Us, or is there a bit more work to do? I believe the latter, but curious on your thoughts. Jeff, take it away.
That's a great question. It's hard for me. I guess let's separate The Last of Us out first, because that's such a narrative heavy story, and I don't think the story like it's almost like how the Oscar always goes to a drama as opposed to a comedy or something like that. But man, Horizon, I don't know. And it's also tough because it is such a nostalgic throwback to, this classic Xbox franchise. Tough. I can't make that call. All I know is I've had a lot more fun with it than I had expected to, and it feels like a hell of a home run for Xbox and for their exclusives, like their lineup of exclusive first party games.
Yeah,
I feel like more than any Xbox games for sure. I feel like I've had multiple people say like, "Hey, where can I get an Xbox? Because I guess I have to play Halo. I need to get an Xbox."
Yep.
And that I feel like the combination of like this game is good enough that you should play it, however you can. And like this is strongly associated with Xbox. I think it is doing everything that an exclusive should.
Yes.
Even though like I would tell most of those people like you can probably just play it on PC and be fine. But like the fact that it's like that association has become so strong that it's like I gotta go get an Xbox to play the new Halo.
Yeah, totally.
That's all I needed to do.
Yeah, it's weird that my first instinct is to be like, no, I don't think it's quite at that Sony exclusive level. But then I was like, wait, I'm having way more fun with this game than I did with like Horizon Zero Dawn as an example. And I enjoyed Horizon Zero Dawn fine, but like minute-to-minute gameplay, it's like, oh, it's this by a mile. I think. Personally. But we'll see in the second half how it all holds together and all that stuff. All right, Wade. It's time to look like a fool. Give us some predictions for the second half of this game.
Oh, God. Well, I'll tell you what I'd like to see.
Yeah.
Obviously, I talked about how my dislike for Halo 5's direction. And
yeah.
Sorry, Serial. I know you said you liked it.
I mean, the story is the worst part of that game, but there are some mechanical stuff that I really enjoyed in 5.
What I would love to see, because honestly, I said this before, but I felt like myself not really like Halo was for me anymore, and this game is kind of pulling me back in. So I would like to see them, if they can find a way to not abandon Halo 5, obviously, because that would feel wrong, but bring it to some sort of satisfying through line so I'm back into the story, I guess. I know it's super vague. I just want them to find a way to do whatever they're doing with Cortana in a way that satisfies. I don't know what's to come, because obviously they want us to think she's dead. Maybe she's not. Who knows? But and I really want them to continue with. I'm saying what they want, but that's not what might happen.
Here you go. Here's a layup, Wade.
Sorry, I'm struggling.
And this is a very dumb layup as well, because I don't know the state of these things. Will the Flood appear in Halo Infinite?
Ooh. I will say no, because with the conversation Cortana has with the monitor, what's more dangerous than the Flood?
Right.
Dot. And then we hear about the Endless. So it doesn't seem like it.
So is the Endless going to be the new Flood? Is that going to be the take?
I guess we'll have to learn more. I mean,
well, wait, we know that. We want you to make a bold stance.
I don't know. It's like the Flood is like 343 has been very careful not to do much with the Flood in the games. And I think that's very deliberate. So if they were going to tiptoe in that direction, it doesn't seem like they're doing that with this. So
right.
It feels like the Endless is something else.
Yeah. We'll see. Do you know? Coward's way out. We'll see. What is there any logic behind the arc? They mentioned the arc. Like there's some audio log where it's like, did Cortana know about this when she chose this ring? Did she expect it to be her tomb as well? Then they mentioned something about an arc. Is that a previous thing or is this new?
I must have missed that audio log. Do you know what it was talking about?
No, I have no idea. It was a KG audio log, believe it or not.
Don't you go to the arc in Halo 3?
We know that Mendicant Bias, the rampant Forerunner AI I mentioned earlier,
yes,
was buried on the Ark.
Okay.
And Cortana is sort of a rampant AI that turned against her creator. So there's like a parallel there.
Okay. Weird. All right. So maybe there's something there. All right, great. And after all this time, we still don't know why Halos have plants on them, but thank you so much for tuning in to the deepest dive on Halo Infinite for the first half of the campaign. Thank you to everybody who supported us on Patreon and submitted a comment for us to read. Again, you can jump over there and support us on Patreon at patreon.com/MinnMax with 2 N's, and you can submit a comment for us to read in the second half of this discussion. If you've enjoyed this discussion, if you're a fan of giving games like these the discussions they deserve, you can help support the format and unlock the podcast version of this discussion and all future discussions and a whole lot more over on Patreon. We'd appreciate it. Jeff, we'll be back, baby. We'll be back on, well, it'll air on January 4th, 2022, which
plenty of time next year.
Oh my God, that's some sci-fi year. That's not
I'm gonna
happening.
play 1 minute of Halo every day so that I can consistently keep up. That's how long away that is.
That's right. Yeah, and we'll be looking for your comments on the second half of the game starting on Sunday, January 2nd. So thanks everybody who submitted so far, and we look forward to reading more of your comments. And hopefully, with that big of a gap over the holiday break, you have enough time to jump in there. And we'd love to have you join along. Anything else we've missed in this discussion?
I wanted to say, one night I was playing and it was like 3 a.m. and I was like, I should really stop and go to bed because my baby keeps me up half the night anyway. But there was one assassination mission on my map, and it was an assassination mission for a grunt. And the first one, that sword guy, Hansen, also kicked my ass for like half an hour. But I saw the grunt guy and I was like, I think I know what they're going to do with this. So I'm just going to go to it. And I went to it and I shot him once and he instantly died and I passed the mission and I was very amused and satisfied. It was a good
beautiful.
way to end the night.
And your baby rolled over peacefully and kept on snoring away.
And was holding 2 plasma grenades and you were like, "Ah,
you did it!"
Yeah, you're teaching your baby to speak like a grunt, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Smart. Oh, something big that we should have talked about. This probably isn't too big of a thing, but they're clearly beating the drum that it's weird that none of us talked about it yet, of Cortana saying, if you knew how you're going to die, would it change the way you live your life? Like that echo is happening over and over again. So clearly that's coming back in the second half, right?
I just thought that was a Big Fish reference, personally.
Oh, maybe it was. Yeah.
A lot of Burton fans over at 343.
And then my last... Oh, somebody else has something to say?
Oh, I had one other comment that I wrote down.
Please.
Those freaking hunters. How about those hunters? Giant hunters.
Usually 2 of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Went right behind him. It was like piece of cake. Shot him in the back. That didn't do this time, Hansen. What kind of upgrade did those guys have?
That's not what I signed up for.
These are the Banished hunters. They're upgraded.
Oh, man.
Completely different.
The last thing I had was you can't see your feet or legs in this game. What's the deal?
Is it the first Halo?
I'm pretty sure
that's true. You can see your feet.
Not on mine. I'm playing on PC. Maybe it's an Xbox thing.
It's an Xbox exclusive for the feet.
That's the first thing I'm going to check.
They knew the market for feet is really hot right now, so they made it an Xbox exclusive.
Oh, let's see. Other things we didn't hit on. Welcome to this weird part of the deepest dive. The flying monkey thingies.
Skimmers.
My note was despondent pyre and then a rolling eyes emoji because that name is stupid.
We can't say it's stupid because we're friends with Sarah Amelie.
Excellently voiced. She didn't name it. Yeah.
Okay.
And then it said getting attacked by flying monkeys ?
Yeah.
What were those things?
They're skimmers, dude. Come on, don't be naive. They're skimmers. Come on.
Oh, skimmers.
But I like that even they're jokey about it. Like weapons, like, my first choice was flying monkey octopus thingy or something like that. But it's always that dopey thing. Like the worst is X-Men First Class when they all go around and name each other, and it's the hokiest. It's so tough when they have to have some reason why they're coming up with the name, where it's like, let's call them skimmers. And Chief is like, I like it. Bang up name. Just some nonsense like that or whatever.
As opposed to like every other name that these enemies have because they were established prior to Halo 1. They just, there's an elite, there's a grunt.
Yep.
I think this kind of takes the place of the bug flying. I should remember their name from earlier Halos, the flying swarm bug things that shoot the plasma pistols.
Mr. Mosquito. Okay, my big thought. Wade, by the way, all the street cred you built up on this episode is just right down the drain with that.
I know.
Embarrassing.
Hold on, mosquito guys.
My main thought about this game, other than it's very fun, is for something we're seeing so much, that loading screen sucks. What is it? It's just like this weird look at the Halo where it's kind of half of it's kind of a blurry mess, and you see it so much in multiplayer, you see it so much here. Could they not have come up with a more entertaining load screen? And we're on the generation where it's not supposed to have any loading, by the way. And I'm spending half the game, because I'm dying a lot, looking at this mishmash, ugly load screen. I just hate it. I hate it,
Agreed.
Everybody. Thank you. And I'm going to start a petition.
Drones/buggers, by the way, were their names.
Wait, what is the name, Wade?
Drones or buggers.
Drone
I thought they were
bugger.
the Yanmi.
Yeah, that too, of course.
There it is. All right, that's it. Serial, you got any mop-up thoughts?
I had the phrase, hunters go down on you quick if you hit it right, but then Jeffem had to cannibalize my joke. So
Right. It's pretty fun. That's pretty fun for everybody. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. If you enjoyed this, you can always subscribe to MinnMax's YouTube. Wade, can you do the plug without stumbling over your words?
MinnMax with 2 N's. Sorry, patreon.com/MinnMax with 2 N's.
That works for me. All right. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll see you in 2022. Bye. Good luck, Master Chiefs. You can help support independent games media by subscribing to MinnMax on YouTube here, or you can support us over on Patreon to unlock exclusive shows like MinnMax Council. You can call into our podcast. You can put a picture of your choice on every MinnMax video, or you could have us plug your passion project on the MinnMax Show podcast. MinnMax is a Patreon about games, friends, and getting better, and we exist because of you. Any help telling a friend's appreciated.